Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto fall into endless darkness and rescued by pervy Sakura? Movie. It was all she could see. Wherever she looked, it was there, not leaving her vision even for a second. No matter how hard she tried to get rid of it, it followed her everywhere, even in her dreams, a space where she had authority over everything. Why am I like this? She whispered to herself. Why can't I see anything? Her voice cracked, indicating that she was on the verge of crying again but stopped before tears could well up in her eyes. She didn't want to look more weak in the eyes of others. Their usual taunts and berating were already too hard to handle, and she refused to give them more themes to laugh at. When will this night end? Coal-black eyes veered around the playground, hoping to see some light in her darkness-filled world but found none. It was still all black, just as usual. Sayuri. Her lips twitched a little when a familiar sound reached her ears. They were here, she noted, and steeled herself for what was about to come next. Would it be harsher than yesterday? She hoped not, but remained impassive just in case. Are you okay? Slender hands began to shake in anxiety. Yes, she murmured in answer. Oh. The silence that followed the remark scared her. It always did, because it indicated that the worst was about to come next. Do you want to play with us? There it began. She gulped but still kept her calm. I can't, Daisuke. Oh yes, I forgot you were blind. I'm sorry, Sayuri. He meant none of that, she knew. He never did. Daisuke was someone who prospered in the sufferings of others, and hers was no different. It gave him a sense of euphoria, a sensation of satisfaction that the daughter of his clan leader was useless, even more than him. But don't worry, I'm sure you will become a very powerful ninja in the future. Then nobody will laugh at you, Sayuri. Loud laughs that followed his remarks made her squirm, shame and anger being the main stimuli behind it. Don't. Ah, she recoiled in disgust when the fingers of the boy touched her face. It felt horrible, something she wanted to run away from but couldn't, because for that she would need assistance too. Is our little 4-year-old Uchiha prodigy mad at us? No, she hissed when his hands cupped her cheeks. Leave me alone. Please. Shame filled her heart as she spoke that word. It sounded pathetic, even to her ears. Huh, did you just say please? Dull black eyes lowered down in disgrace. Just how much more she was going to endure in her life. She had already ashamed her father enough and didn't want to cross any more boundaries now. I said leave. How much more do you want to humiliate our clan, Sayuri? People already make fun of you, and if you are going to behave like this, then that day isn't far when people will start taking Uchihas lightly. Every word that left his mouth punctured Sayuri's heart and pride in ways she couldn't even explain. How? She whispered. How could her blindness damage her clan's reputation? Wasn't it something that was out of the control of everyone? She didn't choose to be like this, and she was certain neither of her parents did too. It was fate that gave her this curse, and she had no option but to accept and live with it. Because you are weak and Uchihas have no place for people like you. Wasn't he weak too? Sayuri wanted to retort but didn't, because she knew it was unnecessary. Other than igniting a new debate, her reply wouldn't have any additional effect. Daisuke, leave her. She is unnecessary. Another voice entered her ears, and just like Daisuke's, it was bitter and arrogant too. Probably one of his friends, she assumed. Unlike her, Daisuke had many friends, so many that she couldn't even count them on both of her hands. I know. Hey. Sayuri blinked when another foreign voice entered her ears, but this one was different, way too much different. Instead of making her more anxious, it soothed her heart with the amount of hope and happiness it carried. Oh, so he is back, huh? The newcomer wasn't Daisuke's friend, she immediately deduced by the tone he had just used to acknowledge him. Yeah, doesn't he get bothered by getting rejected and thrashed so many times? Sayuri's lips curved down. What did they mean by getting rejected so many times? She couldn't help but wonder. Was the newcomer someone bad? No, she didn't think so, because if he was, then he would have been in Daisuke's friend circle instead of being on the opposite side. Blonde idiot. Blonde. What does that look like? Was it the same as the darkness around her? Monster. Now that took her by surprise. Monster. She frowned upon the strange way that her clan member had just used to call the newcomer. She had never heard them use that term ever before, at least not in front of her. What is his name again, Shibuya? Sayuri perked up. She wanted to know his name too because monster sounded very atrocious to her. It was a term she wouldn't use even for her worst enemy because calling someone monster meant confiscating their humanity off from them. Uzumaki Naruto. The name sounded familiar, very familiar. Sayuri was sure she had heard it somewhere before. But where? She began to reminisce and gasped when a particular memory struck her mind like a boulder. Ka-chan. Her mother had told her about him. A boy who was very much like you. Maybe even worse, but he still smiles, no matter what the conditions are. Sayuri smiled a little. His smile is very contagious, even more than his voice. The words of her brother rang inside her mind then. They were right, she thought to herself. Hey, do you guys want to play with me? A strange emotion began to soar inside her. It was warm and fuzzy but intense enough to make her forget about her dilemma for once. His voice was truly contagious, mostly because of the happiness and the hope it carried. Uzumaki Nar. Slap. Just like that, the sensation vanished, leaving behind a scowl on her face as she stared at the direction from where the sound had come. Earlier, loneliness, an emotion he was very well acquainted with. It was something he had lived with throughout his whole life, from the day he was born to this present bleak moment. Ironically, loneliness is the only thing that had never left him alone. He had tried to suppress it, run away from it, and had even tried to eradicate it from his heart, but unfortunately, it was something that had been engraved on his soul for eternity. No matter what he does, he is bound to this emotion and would have to live with it for the rest of his life. Why? A single word, a heartbreaking question left his dry mouth while his brilliant blue eyes stared at the flourishing village through the broken glass of the window. Broken. This world was a broken spectacle according to him. Otherwise, there's no reason why the populace of this world would loathe and ignore him like that. He's a child, a mere bundle of flesh and bones who wants nothing but a soul who he could call his friend, but this broken world wouldn't even let him have that. Because they despise my presence and fear it. Fear. A feeling that he had never failed to notice in the eyes of people who dared to come close to him. They all feared him, in one way or another. To them, he's someone who should be kept away from everyone but lost in the wilderness of their baseless fears. All these people around him always declined to acknowledge the fear in his eyes. His fear was very distinct from their fear. While they feared his existence, Naruto, on the other hand, feared their rejection. He had always feared rejection, even after experiencing it many times, he still fears it. They reject me because they hate me. Hate. Something he had always felt in every action directed towards him, no matter who the person was. It didn't matter to them that he was just a child who hadn't harmed anyone in his entire life. What have I ever done to these people? Why do they hate me so much? His fists clenched by themselves, tightening as the seconds passed by. Even the Hokage discriminates against me. Discrimination. An aspect that he had seen Hokage live with. The leader of his village never cared about him, did he? All he after was keeping his reputation as a loving and benevolent leader. Never punishing anyone who wronged him, no matter the circumstances. Naruto had always known that for some reason, he was always put below the other villagers. Why? Isn't he supposed to be the village leader? Someone who leads fairly. Then why does he treat me like I don't matter? By this time, his nails were digging into his flesh, making his hands start bleeding a bit. Unknown to him, his eyes had taken on a red hue and his nails had elongated, making them dig deeper into his flesh. Defeat. It was useless, wasn't it? He was going to die all alone in this hell that people called the world. Alone, with no one to call his own. No one to cry over his dying body. Rather, some might even celebrate it for all he knew. The thought stinging like someone had dug a knife in him and twisted it. It made him feel truly hollow inside. The realization that he was always going to live and die alone, forgotten soon after his death not even being an afterthought to anyone around him. No, he shook those thoughts off. He still had his whole life in front of him. He wouldn't give up, he would keep going. Deep down he knew that it'd all be in vain, but his young brain refused to acknowledge this truth. He still wanted to try till the last drops of hope had been squeezed from his soul. This was not getting anywhere. He needed to calm down and think about everything that had been going on. There had to be a reason why the Hokage didn't punish those that wronged him. Maybe they were forcing him to act like this. But that made no sense. He was the leader, he was the supreme authority. No one should be able to force him. Maybe he is like that only Staring at the palm that had been bleeding until a few seconds ago, he decided to give it one last chance. A single shot with all the willpower he could muster. He would try to make friends in the park the next time he went there. He knew that this might turn out like the last many times he had tried, but he had a feeling, like some otherworldly being telling him that it will be fine. That he will achieve this time what he never achieved in the last attempts. With these thoughts, he slowly dozed off, not knowing when sleep claimed him, his last thoughts being hopes of a better tomorrow. Not knowing that fate had some plans for him, plans that would change his outlook on the world forever. Playground. Hey! An overly excited Naruto yelled out, hoping that the kids around him would notice and acknowledge his presence, but sadly, none of them revolved from their position, not even a bit. A little disheartened, Naruto still didn't let the rejection get into his head. He was optimistic, at least for now. Hey, do you guys want to play with me? He exclaimed, yet again hoping to get some reaction out of the children. I will play whatever you guys tell me to. The sadness in his voice was becoming noticeable now. Finally, someone stepped forward, making Naruto happy that someone was going to respond to his queries. Why don't you go away? Were the first words that came out of the mouth of the stranger. Don't you notice that we don't want you here? The boy who whispered those heart-wrenching words had a very unpleasant look on his face, something that Naruto had seen many times in the past. Naruto couldn't complete his argument as he was slapped harshly on the cheeks by that same boy who for some reason was laughing at him now. Soon, all the children who were playing in the park joined the boy and began to laugh at him. Hee, look at this loser. Get him out of this park, he's a terrible person. Yeah, my mom told me that he's a monster. Really, my father told me the same thing. Then what are you guys waiting for? Let's throw him out of the park. Yay. Each and every word those children spoke wounded Naruto's heart in ways he couldn't even explain. Those words made him realize why he was destined to live alone. I just want he was cut off by a punch to his face, courtesy of a random boy. Hey, he yelled out in protest but was soon silenced with another punch to his chin, one that stung harder than the previous one. Look at how he is yelling at us. Naruto, who was lying on the ground, stood up and glanced at the group of children, his eyes staring at each of them with pure sadness. Don't hit me, he whispered, caressing the swollen cheek with his right hand as tears flowed down his bloodied face. I promise I will leave the park and will never disturb you guys again. With that said, he turned on his heels and began to walk towards the entrance of the playground. Still for the last time, he glanced back and smiled at the children. It was futile, he knew that, but he still wanted to say that. If you ever decide to play with me, you can find me on the swing beside the academy. His eyes widened when a boy appeared in front of him out of nowhere and yanked a fist towards his already torn face. The speed and power behind the attack were too much for his 4-year-old body, and soon he again found himself lying lifelessly on the cold ground. As usual, he tried to stand up, but this time the pain was too much, so he decided to rest for a while. His blue eyes drowned in the ocean of sadness when they saw children leaving the park. He wanted to tell them that they don't have to do it, but at that moment he had no energy to draw words out of his mouth. The pain he felt earlier due to the punches was nothing in front of the pain he was feeling right now. Monster. His heart ceased to beat for a moment when he heard a mother utter that phrase as she picked up her child from the playground, her eyes never leaving his bloodied face. I'm not a monster. Tears finally fell from his eyes. I'm living in hell. Strolling through the streets of Konoha was something Naruto had always despised the most. These crowded roads, no matter how joyous they seemed to others, never managed to persuade his heart that they could welcome him ever. People who usually dwelled on these roads were hostile and had always told him to either go away or kill himself. If that was not enough, they usually make fun of him for not having parents, friends, and for being so weak compared to others. They are right though. I can never have friends. No one wants to be my friend, he whispered, hands still positioned on the bloodied and sore cheeks while his mildly broken legs struggled to manage the weight of his frail body. Mama, that boy is injured. We should help him. SSHH. Stay away from him, Aki-chan. He is a bad boy. Bad boy. But he is just like us. Let me. Monster. He is a monster. Naruto stopped and looked at the woman. Usually, by now, he would have gotten into an argument with that lady, but today, something died at the playground, something that had kept him sane and optimistic. Now, he longer wanted to make friends. He had accepted his destiny. I'm going to remain alone for the rest of my life. With that thought in his mind, he began to walk again, completely ignoring the looks people gave him throughout the whole trip. Academy. Creak, creak, creak. The infuriating sound of the swing was nothing new to him. It was something he had got accustomed to over a period of time. This place, this small space beside the enormous academy, was his second home. It's a place where he had spent hours crying and despising his existence, something a 4-year-old child should never do, but sadly, he was an exception. Why? Naruto whispered, his hands gripping the ropes that supported the swing. Why am I the only one to get this treatment? What have I ever done to them? He yelled, pausing for someone to notice his question, but unfortunately, there was no one there, as usual. I just wanted to make new friends, he whined and gently caressed the fresh wound on his lips. It's hurting a lot. A whimper escaped his mouth, indicating that he was certainly in pain today. They punched me so hard that I couldn't even realize what was happening around me. A pathetic smile bloomed on his face as he reminisced the beating he had suffered through the hands of those idiots. Especially that boy who punched me in the last, he mumbled, occasionally glancing at the swollen lips. I should complain about them to the Hokage. He thought about it and was about to stand up from his seat, but at the very last moment, he decided against it. No, what even is the use? I do not matter to him. He will ignore this once again, asking me to forgive those people. Sandal-clad feet patted the damp grass beneath. I think I should. His words were cut short by a melodic voice, a voice he had never heard before, and made him turn around at the speed of light. Are you hurt? It wasn't what she asked that made him freeze up, it was how she said it. Over these past few years, he had grown very adept at sensing the emotions of others. He could easily tell if anything said to him was a lie, or if it was truthful, and by extension, he could also discern the tone of voice behind anything said. For once, the only thing he could hear from another person was worry, concern, and curiosity. However, he was still cautious about the strange girl in front of him. He knew that his assumptions were not foolproof, and that anyone could easily fake their emotions. No matter how docile someone appears to be, they can easily still pose a danger to him. His experiences have taught him the hard way. Hello, Naruto said slowly, on guard for any sudden actions. Who are you and why are you here? The girl flinched when she heard Naruto's voice. It was very much like hers, full of sadness and suffering. My name is Sayuri Uchiha, she whispered, making sure not to make any sudden moves in front of the boy. Naruto's senses went on high alert after he heard the name Uchiha. He didn't have any good experiences with that clan, with most of them pointing out where he ran off to, and sending sneers of disgust his way. He was prepared to bolt from her when the girl spoke again, this time even more nervous. Are you trying to run away from me? If yes, then please stop. I just want to help you. Sayuri spoke hastily as she held up a healing salve with some bandages and placed them down on the ground, backing away after she did. The sadness inside her only grew stronger as she heard Naruto hum silently, probably scared of the items she had just put on the ground. She figured that the only reason that he would do this is if he had been tricked by such things in the past. Little did she know, it was worse. Far worse than she could ever have imagined. My name is Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto. His whisper brought her out of her thoughts as she glanced at him with a small smile on her face, a smile that was enclosed in a sea of comfort. I see, she replied, her dull eyes staring at his marred face. Naruto shifted a little on the swing as he applied the healing salve on his face. Why are you helping me? Large blue eyes blinked at her as he tilted his head in confusion. As far as he knew, people always preferred to remain away from him, especially ones from the reputable clans. Sayuri was taken aback by the blunt question but composed herself quickly. If she wanted to help him, then she needed to appear different from her clan members. I'm amending the mistakes committed by the children of my clan. It was very wrong of them to hit you like that for no reason, she answered. Oh, you saw me too, huh? He immediately looked away, no doubt ashamed to see that someone else saw him get knocked out too. It was already very humiliating, and now after knowing that this girl also saw it, the humiliation only increased. I was just outnumbered, otherwise I'm very powerful, he whispered. I know, Naruto. Whatever he was about to say perished in his mouth when the girl uttered his name. He knew that it might not mean anything special to others, but for him, it still meant a lot because no one in his life had ever whispered his name with so much affection, without any tinge of malice. It was the first time, and so it felt oddly satisfying. He closed his mouth, unable to form any sort of feedback. You don't have to apologize for them, Sayuri-san. I'm fine, he whispered, worried that those boys might bully her too because of him. Sayuri slowly shook her head. No, you deserve an apology, Naruto. The behavior of my fellow clan members was absolutely peccant and should be dubbed accordingly. I see. Naruto didn't understand anything the girl just said, but it sounded nice. It was the first time someone was taking a stand for him, and that fact alone was enough to make him happy. But I still don't want an apology, he asserted, trying to change the mind of the girl because she didn't know what would happen if she forces those boys to apologize to him. Naruto was sure they would try to ruin his life even more, and he didn't want that. He just wanted to live in peace and solace. Hey, why are you laughing? He muttered. Was she making fun of him? He didn't know, but whatever it was, he for sure knew he was the source of it because there was no one else around them. The laughs ceased, and so did his embarrassment. He immediately stiffened when Sayuri looked back at him. I just found your statement funny. Her voice was still devoid of any queasy feeling, a notion that made his heart flutter for some unknown reason. Funny. A smile bloomed on her little face again. Yes. Why? Because your voice was cracking so much while speaking those words. It felt like you were afraid of those boys. Everything left his mind as soon as he heard her answer. He scowled at her, very annoyed by the fact that she was making fun of his anxiety. It wasn't bogus, he was really afraid of those boys because they could ruin his entire life if they wanted to. So the fact that she was making fun of it didn't go well with Naruto. You were only laughing because they didn't make fun of you, he argued back. If you had been in my position, then you would have known what it means to be bullied and beaten by them. A little anger managed to seep out in his voice, something that he didn't notice until it was too late. Sayuri went silent for a while, looking truly hurt by the words that the boy had just spoken. You know, she murmured, her shaky voice doing little to nothing in order to hide her pain. It was there, open for the world to see and hear. I know what it feels like to be taunted by them. I really do. They taunt me every day, from morning to evening. They never leave a chance to make fun of me, she whispered. A sad smile emerged on her lips, a smile that made Naruto uneasy about the forthcoming words. He didn't want to hear them now. Because I'm blind, I can't see anything. At that moment, Naruto wanted to vanish from the world forever. Blind, his soul shattered into million pieces as he recalled what he had just heard. It was painful, so much that for once he forgot about his own problems, the very things that had kept him awake for countless nights. In front of her pain, his pain appeared insignificant because he had no one to lose from the start. Everyone hated him, but the girl in front of him was different. Unlike him, who was loathed by the strangers, she was being detested by her own clan members. Naruto. Naruto raised his head a little. Why, yes. Are you okay? Sayuri spoke, feeling a little uneasy because of his sudden silence. Many people in the past had left her alone during that silence, so she couldn't help but think that he was going to do the same. After all, no one wanted to be friends with a blind Uchiha, and she wouldn't be surprised if Naruto felt the same too. Yes. His soft voice immediately lessened her concerns, to the point where she was beginning to smile again. I see. The uncertainty was still evident in her voice, but an utterly joyous Naruto only managed to see the genuine look of happiness on her face. They both stayed like that for a moment before an inevitable question finally left Naruto's mouth. Do you have any friends? He asked, hoping to hear a yes for the very first time in his life. Selfish as he might be sometimes, he was still compassionate enough to see her anguish and hope that there was someone who was sharing her pain with themselves. Innocent people like her didn't deserve to be miserable and alone like him. No. His heart sank even deeper into the ocean of sadness. I see, he murmured as he looked into her coal black eyes. They were amazing, he noted, and beamed when they twitched as if to show him that she knew he was looking at her. No one wanted to, my friend, not even my own clan members. Like a barrage of huge boulders, her words pummeled the wall around his heart with their innocence and sorrow. She was just like him, but instead of feeling happy for himself, he only felt sad for her. She didn't deserve that. No one did. A life similar to his was even worse than hell, and he wanted no one to have that, especially people like her. Say, if you don't mind, can I ask you something? Naruto nodded his head but soon remembered she couldn't see him. Yes. He murmured. Do you? Sayuri paused, finding it hard to continue what she was trying to say. It was difficult, more than she had expected it to be. So taking a deliberate breath, she began to speak again. Do you want to be my friend? She finally finished but immediately frowned when that silence returned, making her anxious about his response. Aye. The cracks and fright in his voice was enough for her to deduce the rest of his response. It was similar to what she had been hearing since the very beginning. It's okay if you don't want to be my friend, Naruto. I will not. Hhhshhh. Sayuri gasped as the sound of Naruto's whimpers entered her ears. Nar. I always wanted to have a friend. It was barely audible, a soft heart-tugging whisper that fled his mouth, but she heard it, and at that moment, she got all her answers. Blue eyes met faint coal orbs as both the boy and girl looked at each other, his eyes filled with tears and darkness while hers brimming with warmth and light. Sayuri, I'll be the bestest friend you'll ever have. No, he would be more than that. He would be her eyes. Uchiha Itachi was a person who rarely believed in miracles. For him, they were nothing but superficial misconceptions that had been cherished from generation to generation. People who believed in them had this very ridiculous perception of their world according to him. A perception that someone dwelling somewhere unknown was looking after them, ready to intervene if something terrible seemed to occur. It was a preposterous intuition. There was no one above them. They were the governors and slaves of their own life. A god according to him was a product of the fear that resided inside the minds and hearts of his species. The fear of death. They created God to counter that fear because with the concept of a god emerged the notion of heaven and hell. People who used to be afraid of death in the past began to fear it less as their minds submitted to the crazy belief of them being alive in one of those two places even after their demise. He hated the entire concept of God's existence. There was no way it could be genuine because it was then his sister would have been a lot happier than she presently was. If there was really a God above there, then Itachi was sure he wouldn't have given his sister a life full of sorrows and pains. Stupid concept, he whispered as his soft onyx eyes stared at the cup of tea in front of him. It was still, just like his life. Itachi, drink your tea, dear. It'll get cold otherwise. His eyes veered off to the kitchen where his mother was preparing lunch for them, smiling as she did so. I don't want to drink anything right now, he answered. Why? I don't know. His words prompted Makoto to take a break from the cooking. Itachi, her eyes fluttered with worry as they saw his blank face, devoid of every feasible emotion. It was heartbreaking and awful to even look at. Her child was not supposed to amass such things on his face, not under her watch at least. What happened? She asked and raised an eyebrow when her son began to shiver suddenly. Itachi. Why do Sayuri have to suffer so much, mother? An uncomfortable silence fell over the two as they both continued to stare at each other, one waiting for an answer to his question while the other forging it in her mind. It was a sensitive subject for both of them, especially Itachi. After all, the boy cared for his sister very much. I don't know, Itachi, I really don't, she whispered, a pathetic frown blooming on her beautiful face as she dared to lock eyes with her son. He was angry and sad, she could easily see that, but that didn't mean he would refuse to eat his food, something that was very essential for young ninjas like him. It's her fate, and we can't change anything, Itachi. Sayuri was born like that and no one in this world can change her destiny, not even Tsunade-sama. The best we can do is smile and support her through her hardships. Her words managed to affect him a little as he began to look away from her. I'm back, mother. The mother and son closed their mouths as soon as Sayuri's voice entered their ears. Soon, the door to the room skid opened and revealed something that they had thought they would never see again. A happy and smiling Sayuri. That beautiful smile was unlike any other smile they had ever seen on her face. It was bright and full of mirth, even more than they could fathom while smiling. Sayuri, Itachi was fast to react with a smile of his own. How are you? He added, unable to keep himself calm because of the surprise. Why was she smiling? He thought as his mind began to ideate many conclusions for his sister's smile. Did the children of his clan finally allow her to play with them? No, that couldn't be the case. Daisuke wasn't the type of person who would allow his sister to join them. That boy was a pest of his clan and Itachi was sure he couldn't be the reason behind her smile. Then what? He looked back at his sister's face and couldn't stop himself from smiling when he saw her smile again. It was beautiful, a piece of art that he could admire for eternity. Sayuri slowly turned towards her brother and began walking in his direction, making sure not to hit anything in the process. She had already destroyed a fair share of precious ornaments in the past and didn't want to be the bane of new ones too. I'm happy, Ni-san. She never thought she would say these words to her brother ever again, but today, everything was flowing oppositely. Very happy. The happiness in her voice filled the room with warmth as both her mother and her brother stared at her in surprise and joy. Makoto didn't waste any time joining the conversation. Her daughter was smiling and she needed to know why. If it was because of Daisuke, then she had to remember to thank the boy the next time they meet, and if it was someone from the civilian side, then she would shower that child with money, an inconceivable amount of money. Sayuri's smile was invaluable and she was ready to pay any price for that. Sayuri words wrapped in sorrow and happiness escaped her mouth as she left the kitchen and sat down beside her children. Yes, mother, you were looking very happy for some reason. Did anything special happen in the park today? Resting her hand on the table for support, Sayuri looked at her mother and smiled, nodding her head in positive. Yes. The warmth and hope in her voice again overwhelmed the surroundings and silenced Makoto and Itachi for a second. What? A smile finally bloomed on the face of Makoto. I finally made a friend. Yet again, her words silenced the mother and son duo, rendering them as nothing but spectators to her smile. It was unbelievable how those simple words of her were having such a drastic effect on her family, so much that every syllable that was fleeing her lips was shocking them to their core. Really? It was Itachi who spoke this time, looking at his sister in amazement. Sayuri nodded her head quickly. Yes, he is very nice, Ni-san. Just like Shisui Ni. She giggled at the end as her mind recalled a few bits from her game with Naruto. It was funny how the boy turned into a whiny child as soon as he started to lose the game, something that her elder cousin Shisui does a lot too. Itachi blinked at her. He repeated after her. Hismin didn't know how to take in that information. On one hand, he was happy that his sister had finally got herself a friend, but on the other hand, he couldn't help but worry that the boy might be using her for his selfish incentives. She was the daughter of the Uchiha clan's head and Itachi knew very well what that meant. Her name carried power and it was natural for the boys from other clans to use her for that. Females always try to do that with him, so he wouldn't be surprised if that was the case with her sister too. What's his name? Itachi snapped out of his trance and immediately looked at his sister, eager to know the name of the individual. Naruto. His name is Uzumaki Naruto, mother. And just like that, Itachi and Makoto were rendered silent once again, but this time it was because of fear and stress. Uzumaki. Makoto gasped, a wave of nostalgia sweeping over her whole body. Don't worry about her, Makoto. I'm sure she will make many friends, and if by any chance she is unable to do so, then my boy Naruto will always be there for her. Uzumaki will never leave Uchiha, hehe. Single quote. Kushina. Tears finally emerged in her eyes, but before they could escape, she brushed them away with her hand. Kushina. Who is she, mother? The Uchiha matriarch smiled at her daughter. She was a friend of mine, Sayuri. Was. Itachi, who was listening to the conversation from the sides, let out a small chuckle in order to distract his sister from the topic. The path she was treading on with her questions was full of hurt and pain, and he didn't want to see her sad again. Tell me more about this Naruto boy, Sayuri. I want to know about the guy who managed to make my sister smile. He spoke with a curious tone to his voice. Sayuri pouted at her brother. Don't fool me, Ni-san. Her words startled Itachi. You were the one who first told me about him, don't you remember? Black eyes looked at him curiously, making Itachi smile in return. Oh, idiot, Ni-san. Absolutely right, Sayuri. A new voice startled the whole family. Soon they all turned their gaze towards the door and smiled when they saw a familiar face standing there. Shisui ni. Sayuri didn't even need to see anything to know who was at the door. The exotic voice and its unique tenderness was enough for her to deduce its owner. After all, he was the only one person who talked like that in her clan filled with emotionless men. Sayuri. The wind around her split for a second as a wheezing sound entered her ears, indicating that her cousin had just used his famous Shunshin jutsu. Off. She gasped when strong hands slithered between her arms and lifted her high in the air. Oh, look at you. You are smiling today. Her face turned scarlet when her cousin uttered those words. Usually, she would have berated him in an instant, but this time, she let him do whatever he wanted to. Shisui must have noticed the unusual behavior of her sister as he gently dropped her to the ground and began analyzing her curiously. Something was wrong, he could feel it, but what? His mind couldn't deduce that. What happened, Shisui ni? Why are you looking at me like this? The boy jumped away in surprise. Wah, how did you know I was looking at you? Don't tell me you can see everything clearly now, Sayuri. He yelled, pointing his finger accusingly at her. Sayuri pouted slightly at the obvious joke. HMPH. Your breath stinks, Shisui ni. I can smell it from a meter away, you know. She retorted with a joke of her own. Hey, Sho, stay away from me. Mo, you are so rude to me, Sayuri. And, HMPH. You are lucky that I don't have any younger sibling, otherwise he would teach you a lesson right now. Sure. While the two were arguing back and forth with each other, Itachi and Makoto, on the other hand, were staring at them with tears in their eyes. It was still like a dream come true for them. They had never seen Sayuri smile and argue that much in front of anyone, not even them. Usually, she was one of those people who preferred to remain silent and alone in their own space. So to see her interact with Shisui like that was too overwhelming for them. Naruto, Itachi whispered. Makoto nodded her head. Yes. I'll need to keep an eye on him from now on. Can't let anyone hurt my sister's one and only friend. Hokage office. Hokage-sama. A shout interrupted the leisure time of Hiruzen as the owner of the voice barraged into the old and rugged room without even batting an eye towards the occupants. Startled by the sudden interruption, Hiruzen paused his ongoing conversation and decided to acknowledge the new man's query. What happened, Shiro? He asked, his voice as warm as it had been since the first time he had accepted the title of Hokage. He is at it again. The irritation in Shiro's voice was enough for the old man to decipher the cause of the problem. Naruto, he thought, a grim expression lingering on his wrinkled face. From the moment Naruto had learned to speak and walk, that boy had become the bane of his existence, at least in front of the people of his village. Just like his infamous mother, the boy was a very well-known prankster. While Kushina's pranks were limited to her friends, Naruto on the other hand was slightly ahead of his mother. His pranks knew no bounds and usually ended up with either him getting knocked down by the villagers or him destroying their shops and houses with that nauseous hue of orange. I'm sorry for his behavior, Shiro. I'll take care of the damages as usual. He assured the man. Thank you so much, Hokage-sama. Shiro bowed to his leader and was about to take his leave but stopped midway through the walk. Can I suggest something, Hokage-sama? Of course you can, Shiro. You are a proud resident of this village. The man paused a little before he began to speak again. You have to do something about that brat. For how long are you going to pay for his stupidity? We civilians aren't that fond of him either, and I'm afraid that one day someone from our side might end up being a victim of him in ways that I don't even want to think about. Then don't think about it. Another voice, that belonged to none other than Danzo, broke the silence of the room. What we do with our funds is our concern, and you civilians should not worry about it. We are shinobi, tools forged to protect weaklings like you, and that boy is no different from us. The one-eyed man turned his gaze at his friend. Hiruzen, send this man out of the room right now. He's only wasting our time. Hiruzen was fast to notice the tension between the two individuals. Shiro, he glanced at the man with the most apologetic look on his face. Right now, We are having a very important conversation, so I'll be really happy if you please leave us alone for the time being. Shiro nodded his head quickly, although one could see the tinge of discomfort clearly on his face. The man was no doubt irritated by how Danzo had regarded him and his fellow civilians earlier. Sure, Hokage-sama, but remember, if the boy tries to do those pranks again, especially around my house, then we will be forced to take severe actions. His words were followed by an equally hard look. Sure, you can do whatever you want with that boy. We shinobi won't interfere with your job unless the situation turns life-threatening for the boy. A sigh of relief escaped the dry lips of Hiruzen as he saw the man leave the confines of his lovely room. People like him were common in his room, and almost every one of them had the sole purpose of the visit. A purpose who had been haunting him ever since he had appeared in this world. Uzumaki Naruto, the old man whispered as his eyes slowly wandered off to one particular picture that was hanging on the rugged walls of his room. A picture of a man with hair as bright as the sun and eyes as blue as the deepest ocean of the world. Your child is a nuisance, Minato. In the past, I used to think that he would turn out to be like you, a loyal servant, but instead he picked up the traits of that woman. You hate him, don't you, Hiruzen? Danzo whispered from the side. No, I don't. You are lying. Tough as you might act, you're still a human, and we humans have this tendency to give up against our emotions once in a while. The cold yet truthful words of Danzo made Hiruzen silent. That boy reminds you of the death of your beloved wife. His smile haunts you, doesn't it? The one-eyed man asked his friends, his voice as apathetic as ever. Hiruzen's lips twitched a little as the hurt that he had stored inside for so long began to sneak its way to his face. His friend was right. Try as hard as he might, he couldn't hide the fact that he hated that boy. Naruto was the container of that beast that ravaged his precious village and killed his beautiful wife. You shouldn't be. Answer honestly, Hiruzen. This is a question from your old friend Danzo, not the commander of Root. Brown eyes widened in surprise. It was rare for Danzo to act like that in front of him. His friend was too impassive for his good. Old friend EHH. Wrinkled lips curved up with mirth and sadness. Then I won't lie. No, I don't hate that boy. He holds no importance to me. His existence only has my attention because he holds that beast, and that beast is very important for our village. Even if I want to, I can't let anything happen to that boy. A smirk surfaced on the marred face of Danzo. His friend's answer was exactly what he had speculated it would be. It was what he wanted it to be. An apathetic attitude towards that boy. I see, he whispered, satisfaction apparent in his hoarse voice. You're right about the conclusion, Hiruzen. We can't afford to lose that boy. He is too precious for our village. But that doesn't mean we can't let him have his own opinion about other villages and people. Letting him have his own opinions. What are you trying to imply, Danzo? Danzo placed his hand on the table, his eyes still staring at his friend. Emotions are trivial and should hold no importance to any shinobi, but opinions, they are a totally different aspect and help a shinobi to struggle hard for the ultimate prize, that is sacrificing himself for the betterment of his village. While emotions cloud one's judgment during a battle, opinions, on the other hand, allow them to perceive what is wrong and what is right, especially if we only let him form opinions that we want him to have. His dull black eye crinkled a little as it slowly turned away from a silent Hiruzen. Take us as an example, he whispered, and noted that the walls of the room were still as rugged as they were in the past. The past where he had a chance to sit on the seat that was stolen from him because of a trivial mistake on his part. Us. His attention shifted from walls to Hiruzen fast, but didn't stay there for too long. Yes, us. We are different, aren't we, Hiruzen? Danzo's words might have been directed towards his friend, but his attention was still lingering on the glorious seat on which his friend was sitting. A chair that amassed a lot of power, and he was someone who adored power. Power guaranteed fear, and fear guaranteed the security of his village. You are a man who possesses a lot of power yet chooses to remain soft and kind to our enemies, but I, on the other hand, I'm different. Unlike you, I don't sympathize with people who are willing to kill me the moment they get a chance. Hiruzen shifted slightly on his seat, no doubt a little peeved by the straightforward words of his friend. What does this have to do with our opinions? He asked. Everything. Our opinions are what makes us think like we do, Hiruzen. You hold an opinion that this world is gray, and hence you sympathize with everyone, even your enemies, because to you, they still might have a sliver of light left within them. I, on the other hand, hold an opinion that this world is black and white. I either respect an individual or outright hate him. I don't believe someone can be both good and bad at the same time. Ha ha ha! Boisterous laughter interrupted Danzo. You're a very interesting individual, Danzo. May I ask what made you conclude that, Hiruzen? Hiruzen smiled, knowing very well that his friend was a little annoyed by the earlier interruption but made no motion to calm him down. Your words, Danzo, your words. Your words contradict your presence. Here, you are telling me that a person can't be good and bad at the same time while you, yourself, are a prime example of such a person. Danzo took a deep breath. Am not a good person, Hiruzen. That's where you are wrong, Danzo. Your actions may seem a little odd and evil, but in the end, you only mean good for this village. And what made you think that what we do is good? The old Hokage paused. We work for the betterment of our village. Isn't that? It's not. There are no good or bad actions in this war-torn world. Actions that would make us heroes in our village would make us the most hated people in some other village. Minato is a prime example of this very thing. The redhead's name caused Hiruzen's mood to sour a bit, remembering the actions of that idiotic man during the Kyuubi's attack. Putting the little amount of annoyance aside, he decided to continue his little exchange with his old friend. So you think that there can be no absolute good or absolute bad? Well, I would beg to differ. Many of your actions have prevented all-out wars, saving millions of lives. I think that counts as an absolute good. Those actions of mine costed lives, of both my operatives as well as the targets and sometimes even their families. How could they be considered as absolute good? It is the sacrifice of the few for the betterment of the many. It is still bringing sorrow and sadness to the ones who were harmed. Seeing that his friend had a point, Hiruzen was forced to concede to his argument. Try as he might, he just could not find one example where someone, somewhere didn't have to suffer due to his actions as a leader. It was quite baffling to look back at his actions as good, after hearing his friend's thoughts. Near Uchiha clan compound, Sayuri was confused. What was she doing here in this open field near the river? Wasn't she supposed to be playing with her friend on the swing? Speaking of Naruto, where did he go? She asked quietly, still not sure where her friend went to. He just told her to stay here for a while and then left in an instant. He is. Sayuri. Her eyes squinted a little when his soft voice reached her ears. Naruto. She spoke as she looked in the direction from where his voice had come. Where were you? Her lips formed an adorable pout, indicating that she was very annoyed by the fact that he had left her alone in this field for no reason. I just OWW. Her heart skipped a beat when she heard the pain in his voice. Naruto. Is everything okay? Raising her hands, she began to search for him, hoping to find his face so that she could analyze it for any physical injury. From what she had heard from her caretaker, Naruto was a pretty popular target for the bad people of her village. He hadn't told her the reason for that, but the fact alone was enough to make her sad for her friend. I'm fine, Sayuri. She immediately distinguished the fake enthusiasm that he was trying to conjure in order to appease her. It was as apparent as the sun in the sky above. She couldn't see it, but the heat was enough for her to know it was there. No, you are not. Your voice is cracking, Naruto. She grumbled in concern. Here, sit beside me and let me check. Her hands again hovered in the air to find him, but the boy didn't dare to come close to her. Duh, how would you know I'm hurt or not, Sayuri? You can't see my... Sayuri rendered him silent with a cold glare. I can hear your pain, Naruto. You can't hide that from me, she whispered. Fine, here, check my face as much as you want. I'm telling you there is nothing wrong with me, Sayuri. Her eyes lowered down a little when her hands finally made contact with his soft skin, caressing it gently in order to locate the terrible wounds there. For a while, she continued to scan his whole face before her hands abruptly stopped when they felt a lump lying beneath the soft skin of the boy. Scowling ever so slightly, she looked at the boy. Naruto. Her lips curved down when she received no response from the boy. What is this? She asked, touching the swollen part gently with her finger. I don't know what you're talking about. A sigh escaped her lips. I'm talking about this, she answered and poked the lump rather harshly this time. OWW. See, I know you're hurt, Naruto. You can't hide it from me. Was. The stuttering of her friend was very dreadful to hear. At that moment, it seemed like Naruto had lost all of his confidence in an instant and was behaving like a clueless idiot, something that made her very unhappy. His confidence and his happy voice were the things that made him Naruto, and she would be a fool to allow him to forfeit them. Leave it. I don't want to hear about it, she whispered as she began searching for the healing salve that she had started to carry with her frequently these days. Here, let me mend your wounds, Naruto. Her words were met with a small murmur of approval, and soon she began applying the cream on the wounded face of her friend. I have brought you some fresh apples and tomatoes, Sayuri. The girl paused her task for a while and glanced at her friend. Tomato. Did he bring tomatoes for her? Her lips curved up at the mere thought of eating tomatoes and apples with him. Is this why you are injured right now, Naruto? She couldn't help but ask because as far as she knew Naruto barely had any money, so the idea of him buying expensive apples and tomatoes didn't sound reasonable to Sayuri. Hee. She was right. His giggles told her everything. Did you steal them? Her words earned her a groan of disapproval from the boy. No, I just gathered them from the trees themselves. I see. Still, you should not. OWW. Sayuri, that hurts, you know. The girl gasped in surprise and brought her hands back to herself. I'm sorry. Aw man, now my clothes are all red, no covered with the cream. Red clothes. Sayuri's mind ceased to function for a second as soon as she heard those words. Are you bleeding, Naruto? She asked, looking every bit concerned about her friend. Naruto recoiled back in surprise and looked away from the girl. Even though he knew she couldn't see him, her eyes were still always able to get the truth out of his mouth somehow. It was like they knew what he was doing and what he was hiding from her. And no, he lied in hope that she would stop asking these stupid questions. Then why did you say red? But she didn't. She just kept asking them. I accidentally said that, Sayuri. No, he sighed because at that moment he knew she wouldn't calm down until he told her the truth. Fine. I did bleed a little when that man pushed me away from the wall. Now satisfied, he asked her with a small pout on his face. And no, his heart sank a little when her shaky voice entered his ears. Looking at her, he gasped when he saw her crying silently. Sayuri, why are you crying now? I'm still alive, you know. He tried to reassure her, but the girl simply ignored him. You are my only friend, Naruto. I don't like when people hurt you. The boy went silent. After all, there was no way he could argue against that statement. It was as true as it could get. I know, was his only response to it. Then why do you get in so much trouble for me? We just met a few days ago. That did it for him as drops of fresh tears began leaking out of his big blue eyes. I don't know, Sayuri. I don't know. He lied again because he very well knew why he was doing so much for her. Unlike her, he didn't even have a family of his own. Sayuri was all he had, and there was no way his tiny mind wouldn't think of stupid ideas to keep her entertained. He feared that one day she would get bored with him too, and then just like others, she would leave him all alone. He didn't want that to happen, even if it meant getting injured daily. He was ready for that. His physical injuries were nothing compared to. Then try to avoid getting in trouble, Naruto. Find some other hobbies. He smiled at her, his swollen cheek paining slightly as he did so. Like what? Sayuri turned her gaze at him and frowned. Shinobi training, she suggested. I don't have anyone who can teach me that. Then I can introduce you to someone who's very good at training. Naruto blinked. Who? He couldn't help but ask. Shisui ni. Darkness. It was all his bright yellow eyes could see in his murky and damp chambers of secrets. The same chambers that had been the home to many inhumane experiments, some horrible, others downright evil. No matter how far or in which direction he looked, that evil darkness always persisted, both on the inside and the outside. It was a part of him now, a piece that had eaten away the tiny sliver of humanity that resided inside him and replaced it with nothing but pain and a wish for vengeance, retribution, or whatever people called it. Moving away from the darkness, his eyes glanced at his pale hands and blinked, a sliver of remorse flickering there for the briefest of a second. What have I become? He asked himself, eyes still idling on the hands that had killed numerous people without a tinge of indecisiveness. I was not like this. His whisper made him frown as the sweet and sour memories of the past began to haunt his devious mind. I was his mouth closed on its own before he could utter those frivolous words. He was never happy in the past. Happiness was an illusion for him, an illusion that he could never be a part of. Why, Hiruzen Sarutobi. The darkness increased, both on the inside and outside as his lips parted to utter that heinous name. Hiruzen Sarutobi was the bane of his existence, and the mere fact that he was still alive and happy in that accursed village always brought pain and anger to his mind. That man deserved nothing, not even suffering that one usually wishes upon their enemy. He is a monster. Hiruzen Sarutobi was a monster disguised in the veil of innocence and humanity. One might think that the Jinchuriki community were the true monsters of their world, but according to him, there was no bigger monster than a man who knew how to fool people in broad daylight with his deceitful act and then scheme against those very beings in the darkness of night. Hiruzen was that man. Allied with his old and wicked friend Danzo, Sarutobi was an unstoppable force of nature. Wherever they went, war and destruction followed. Innocents died for no reason. Women were raped and subjugated into broodmares for bloodlines, and children were sacrificed to his so-called will of fire, which was nothing but a cult of convenience. And among them was Orochimaru-sama. Bright yellow eyes veered away from the green tubes of liquid and settled on the slim frame of his student, hidden very well in the dark. "What?" Orochimaru whispered, his voice filled with anger and bitterness. "I have news for you." The snake Sanin pondered over the words of his student for a second and ultimately decided not to heed them any attention. They were useless. It's about Naruto-kun." The mere name brought a myriad of emotions with itself and froze Orochimaru to his place for a second. Naruto," he shouted, finding it hard to hold the surprise within himself because it had been weeks since he had heard that name. Did something happen to him? No, he refused to entertain that thought. Immoral and cunning as they might be, Hiruzen and Danzo still cared about power, and he was sure they would never harm the boy, unless, no. His eyes shot wide in fear. What happened to him? He immediately asked his subordinate. "Nothing bad, Orochimaru-sama." Then, the figure smiled, his white teeth gleaming ominously in the dark. "He has finally made a friend." "Who? Is he a civilian, shinobi, or an agent of Root?" Orochimaru scowled slightly. "What?" he asked, confusion palpable in his tone as he spoke to the figure in the dark. "Sayuri Uchiha, daughter of Fugaku Uchiha." For the second time that day, his eyes widened in surprise. "An Uchiha?" He could not help but repeat the words of his subordinate. What was an Uchiha doing with him? Were not they supposed to stay away from him? So many questions were racing through his mind, but he had answers to none of them. "Yes, Orochimaru-sama. They recently became friends when she helped him mend his injuries near the academy." "Injuries?" Orochimaru flinched slightly when he heard that word but composed himself quickly before his subordinate could notice anything. The word injury was cruel, especially when used along with the mention of Naruto. That boy did not deserve injuries, not even in the slightest. "I see," he whispered, making sure to appear as calm as possible. "Anything else?" His eyes again veered over to the figure in the dark, urging him to answer his question. "Yes." "What?" was the serpent's immediate reaction to the reply. A sly chuckle echoed in the dark corner of the room as the unknown figure there tried to hold his excitement within himself. "Little Naruto is going to meet his first teacher today." The chuckle altered into a smirk as he finished his answer. "Teacher? Who is going to train him?" Finally, Orochimaru let the emotions flow out of him, trying nothing to stop them now. "Shisui Uchiha." Yellow eyes widened to unnatural proportions when he heard that name. Shisui. His stuttering was clear evidence that the aforementioned boy was someone who could not be taken lightly. After all, who did not know about Shisui Uchiha? He was a walking monster of the Uchiha clan, one who could kill anyone with a mere glance of his eyes, sometimes even that was not necessary. Yes, Sayuri Uchiha was the one who took Naruto-kun to him. The anxiety inside him increased. "Why?" he asked, not knowing how to feel about that. On one hand, he was glad that Naruto had finally found someone to talk to, but on the other hand, his mind could not ignore the fact that Naruto was the present jailer of Kyuubi and everyone knew about the covenant that the tailed beast had with Sharingan, especially Mangekyo. "I don't know. I couldn't get more information about it, Orochimaru-sama. I'm sorry. A small frown marred the pale face of the man. No need to apologize, dear. I'm very pleased with the information that you have brought to me, he assured his subordinate. Thank you. A distinctive sound of clothes rustling reached Orochimaru's ears, indicating that his subordinate was about to leave the room. Oh, and before you leave for Kurigakure, can you please finish a small work of mine? Sure, Orochimaru-sama. Tell Aota that he can finally visit Naruto-kun now. A gasp echoed in the room. Are you sure, Orochimaru-sama? Konoha. So he is the one, huh? Coal-black eyes stared at the small boy in front of them as they analyzed his face intently, looking for any possible inkling of bitterness or deception there. Sayuri, who was observing the confrontation from the sidelines, decided to intervene between the two in order to help her friend. He had not spoken a word for a while now, and that was making her worried. Naruto was not the one to remain silent in front of others, no matter what the conditions were. Yes, he is my friend, Naruto Uzumaki, Shisui ni. He wants to train under your guidance so that he can become as powerful as you. Being the smart girl that she was, Sayuri only picked up the best words to compliment her brother. After all, everyone knew how much her cousin liked getting compliments, especially from girls. Shisui broke contact with the scared boy and looked at Sayuri. Really? He asked, and when the girl nodded her head in affirmation, he again looked at the boy and smirked, a gesture full of arrogance and pride. I see. Lowering himself a little, he patted the boy's head, earning a groan from him. Then I'll train you. Really? But first tell me, why do you want to train under me? Whatever Naruto had in his mind perished as soon as he heard Shisui's words. He paused, wondering about the possible answers he could muster for the strange question. I want to become stronger, was the first thing that left his mouth. But when the older boy did not look impressed, Naruto panicked and began to think about more reasons. I want to show everyone that I'm not weak, he blurted out, but the boy still remained unimpressed. Tired and ashamed of himself, he looked at his friend and grimaced when he saw a scowl there. Scowl never looked great on her face, at least to him they did not. They were cruel, downright repugnant if you asked him. His friend was only supposed to smile and remain happy in front of him. It was his duty to protect her from the arms of despair. Protect. His eyes widened a little at the familiar word. I want to protect her, he exclaimed while looking back at the boy. Shisui, who was eyeing the boy intently, smiled slightly when he heard his answer. And why do you want to do that? She already has a family for that, he asked, the smile still plastered on his face. Because I don't. She is all I have. The smile on Shisui's face widened, indicating that he was more than happy to hear what he just heard from the boy's mouth. His eyes then veered off to the direction where his cousin was standing and narrowed down a little when he saw sparkling drops of tears on her face. Sayuri, his eyes softened as he gazed at her, eyeing the tears on her face with an uncomfortable pain in his heart. Why are you crying? He asked her and almost gasped when the boy flickered away from his sight and appeared in front of her. It was fast, he had to give him credit for that. How did he do it? Shisui did not know. Oi, Sayuri, why are you crying now? The pain in Shisui's heart declined slightly when the boy asked that question to his cousin. It was as if he knew what he was doing. I'm not crying. Oh really? Then what are these drops of liquid on your face? Water. I see. Then I can taste them, right? Ew. Naruto, you are so gross. What? How am I gross when you are the one who can produce water out of your eyes? Is this an ability of your clan or what? Shisui could not control himself anymore and started to laugh loudly, drawing the attention of both the children. Haha. The laughs did not cease and continued to flee his lips. Ability of my clan. He whispered to himself and let out another loud chuckle before looking back at the children, who now were staring at him in worry. You are funny, Naruto. I have to give you that. He praised the boy, earning a yelp of surprise from him. Thank you, Ni-sama. Time paused for Shisui as soon as those unexpected words of Naruto reached his ears. They were heartwarming and for some reason, they felt different from what he usually heard from his fellow clan members. His clan's children, although civil and cute, never dared to call him Ni-san. Even after being encouraged to do so many times by him, they still refused to call him by that honorific for some reason. Maybe it was his fear, or maybe it had something to do with his behavior towards their stupid parents, but the children refused to call him by that name. So to finally hear it from someone else's mouth other than Sayuri's felt good. It felt really good. Ni-sama. He smiled at the surprised boy, who immediately averted away from his gaze. I'm sorry, afraid that he might have annoyed the older boy. Naruto was about to apologize, but Shisui's voice stopped him from doing that. No, it's fine. I actually like it. Naruto paused and then looked at the boy, smiling himself when he saw nothing but warmth and love there. Was every Uchiha supposed to be like these two? He wondered, because, in the past few days, Sayuri and Shisui had shown him something that the other people of his village had failed to show in their lifetimes. Kindness, a simple but powerful sentiment that hardly took anything from you while having the potential to change the lives of others around you. Unfortunately, Naruto never had any chance to see it among the populace of his village. Konoha, as everyone called it, was a world in itself for him, filled with nothing but hatred. Thus, to see someone who was willing to show him kindness without having any ill intention was surprising for him, more so when said individual belonged to the most influential clan of the village. Uchiha. He would never forget this name. Naruto. His blue eyes snapped out of the stupor when Sayuri's voice entered his ears, making him jump a little in surprise. What? Casually looking around, he saw that both Uchihas were staring at him in worry, most probably because of the lack of answers from his side. Stupid thoughts. He admonished himself internally for not paying attention to the people around him. You went silent all of a sudden, Naruto. Is everything all right? Small lips curved up in a smile. Yes, I'm fine, Sayuri. It's just that I started thinking about something. He answered her in a murmur. Something. Naruto paused and looked at Shisui in order to check what he was doing, only to gulp loudly in worry when he saw the intense look in the older boy's eyes. He was assessing him and Naruto did not know what to do. It was about ramen, hee. He lied and sighed in relief when both Uchihas drifted their sharp gazes away from his face. Their eyes. Something is wrong with them. His young mind concluded after a quick consideration. No matter what he tried or did, Naruto was sure their eyes could unravel whatever he was trying to hide from them. They were probably made like that, or maybe it was just a stupid intuition of his mind, but still, he was sure they could, and that was one of the main reasons he needed to learn how to hide things from those onyx eyes. Fine, don't tell me, Naruto, but at least pay attention to what Shisui is saying, okay? Now out of his thoughts, Naruto gulped when he heard his friend's words. How did you know I was lying? Those were the first words that left his mouth, his face calm yet startled at the same time. Sayuri blinked and soon smiled at him, playfully wiggling her eyebrows as she tried to taunt him more. I know everything that is going in your mind, Naruto. A giggle escaped her lips as she finished her bold statement. How? Naruto interrupted her. Another giggle echoed throughout the surroundings. It's a secret, she taunted, her voice almost inaudible to everyone but him. HMPH. A cute little pout formed on his lips as he looked away from the girl. Meanie. Hey, what? Sayuri would have argued more with him, but her cousin decided to interrupt them at that very moment. Now, don't fight with each other like that. You are supposed to be friends, right? Naruto glanced at the boy and blinked. We are not fighting, Ni-sama. It's just how everything left his mouth when the wind around him picked up the pace for a second as Shisui flickered away from his sight and materialized between him and Sayuri. Whoa, he screamed, shock evident on his face while he continued to gape at the powerful shinobi. How did he do that? His mind asked itself, because it was amazing, more than anything he had ever seen or heard about. The pure admiration and amazement in the boy's eyes took Shisui by surprise too, as he did not know the reason behind such abrupt change. What happened, Naruto? He finally asked the boy. You are amazing, Ni-sama. Naruto's words sent a torrent of pride inside Shisui's mind and made him a little more complacent. His eyes squinted a little as he tried to decipher the reason behind the boy's compliments. How did you do that? Do what? Naruto smiled at the boy and clapped his hands together in amazement, indicating that he was very captivated by the event that had just transpired a while ago. That Shunshin, how did you do that? It was so fast. He was not lying. It was certainly the fastest and the coolest display of Shunshin he had ever witnessed in his insignificant life. Those that he had seen before were nothing compared to the Shunshin of Shisui. They were fast, but the older boy's Shunshin was way beyond their league. Ah, everything finally clicked inside Shisui's mind. So you were surprised by my Shunshin, He smirked, pride and satisfaction obvious in his voice. After all, if there was one thing that Shisui liked more than anything else, then it had to be getting compliments from other people, especially if those said other people were his juniors. It made him feel like he was the most powerful and badass shinobi around. Of course I was surprised, Shisui ni-sama. Naruto responded, still not forgetting to add the honorific after the boy's name. If he wanted to remain with Sayuri, then respecting her family was necessary, no matter how odd it felt to his ears and his mouth while speaking. Your Shunshin was the fastest I have ever seen anyone perform it. It was so fast that I couldn't even guess where you would appear the next second. His voice began to gain a little momentum and confidence as he smiled at the seemingly proud boy. Ha ha. The boisterous laughter of Shisui chimed throughout the area, startling both the children with its pride. Shisui ni, Sayuri, who had been standing quietly for a while now, finally decided to intervene again when she heard that arrogant laughter of her cousin. Are you okay? I'm all fine, Sayuri. Shisui waved his hand in dismissal and continued. I was just a little surprised to see someone who also likes speed as I do. It's pretty uncommon if you ask me, because children don't understand the importance of speed and are usually attracted to those flashy jutsus. He finished in distaste. Naruto knew it was his chance now. I like speed. It's very useful for running away from your enemies and aggressive people. He blurted out and gasped when the Uchiha duo turned towards him in unison. Really? He nodded his head gently. Why yes, forget ni-sama, then. Call me sensei from now on. Naruto's eyes almost bulged out from their sockets in surprise. After taking a few deliberate breaths he was about to respond but could not when an equally elated Sayuri decided to speak. So are you going to train him, Shisui ni? Shisui gently ruffled her hair, earning a displeased groan from her. Yes, he whispered, sounding as serious as he could. After all, there was no way he could say no to her. Yay, did you hear that, Naruto? Naruto did not answer. He was too overwhelmed by the emotions at that moment. In his whole life, never had he thought he would see a day when someone would show him a sliver of kindness, but Sayuri proved him wrong and he was glad that she did. Naruto. His blue eyes sparkled with tears as they gazed into her black orbs. They were beautiful yet at the same time painful to look at because they reminded him of something that he could not change. Your eyes, his mouth opened on its own. I'll heal them. He did not know why he said that, but that statement finally gave him something that he truly needed in his life. A dream. No, a goal worth reaching towards. His heart desired no power to rule the world, no authority to control the people, no fear of him in anyone's heart. All he wanted was to cure her blindness, and he would make sure that goal became a reality even if he had to upend his entire world for it. Shimmering bright streams of fire ran wild along the lines which surrounded the sacred pond of Naka. The heat from the flames was so intense that even the water inside the pond began boiling uncontrollably, spewing hot clouds of vapor all around the area. Naruto, stand up and do it again, Shisui whispered in a demanding tone. He knew the boy would not take the exercise seriously otherwise. At the mention of his name, a pair of blue eyes blinked up at the Uchiha. Shisui ni, I'm not a machine, you know. I need rest, Naruto grumbled, looking thoroughly annoyed by the teen who himself was resting beneath the shadow of a tree without a care in the world. Shisui smiled. The boy was exactly like Sayuri had told him, convivial and straightforward. I don't want you to be a machine either, Naruto. My aim is to train you so that you can be better than anyone and anything in this world. He knew the boy heard him when he abruptly began to make faces towards him. I can see you, Naruto, Shisui said as a small stream of water rose above from the pond and showered the boy. Ni-san, Naruto yelled out at him, but Shisui maintained his calm and chose to ignore the disapproval of the boy. That was nothing new for them after all. In the past few months, there had been numerous occasions where he had done something like that and Naruto had shown his displeasure immediately, only to get ignored by the older Uchiha. The blonde boy huffed and turned his face away from the sight of his brother. Stupid old. Another wave of water splashed with his face. How can you still hear me? He groaned, caressing his wet tresses gently. Did you say something? Of course you'd say that. I'm sure this has nothing to do with you being an Uchiha and a Jonin, right? The sarcasm did not go unnoticed by Shisui. Create a bigger fireball this time, otherwise I will hand you over to Fugaku-sama. A cold shudder ran down his whole spine when his brother mentioned that cursed name. Of all the people, why he chose to mention him. Fugaku Uchiha was someone he wanted to stay away from at any cost. Just a glimpse of that man's face was enough to scare Naruto for nights. That was one of the main reasons he had still not met him. He had met everyone from Sayuri's family but not him, and he liked to keep it that way only. Please no. I'll try my best, Shisui ni. Mustering the best innocent face, he looked at the teen and pouted. If there was anything useful he had learned from his past experiences, then it was the fact that his brother could never say no to his innocent face. I'm not falling for this trap again, Naruto. Please. Onyx's eyes twitched at the sight in front of them. No. If you fail this time, I will send you to Fugaku-sama. He stood up from his position and was rather pleased to see the immediate results. In a blink, Naruto stood at the edge of the pond again, hands already working through the seals needed for the jutsu while his lungs prepared the required chakra. Watch this. Shisui heard Naruto yell before chaos rained down the area. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. A smile blossomed on his Shisui's face when an enormous amount of chakra left Naruto's mouth in the form of a huge ball of fire. It was magnificent in every aspect, besides her power. You still have a long way to go to improve, but for now, it's sufficient. His smile stretched out further when the boy began to glare at him. You're a cruel teacher, Shisui ni. An utterly exhausted Naruto whispered. First you force me to learn this fire-style jutsu even though you know fire is not my primary nature, and when I finally do that, you ignore all my efforts, he added with a hurtful look on his face. I know, Naruto. I'm Shisui Uchiha. Cruelty and power flow through my blood. Now that made Naruto laugh. Cruelty and power flow through my blood. He mimicked the older boy and began to laugh harder. Is this the same Shisui Uchiha who cried when he saw my apartment for the first time? He asked, ready to sprint away at any given moment. Sharingan flared in Shisui's eyes. What did you just say, brat? He asked the little boy but got no answer. I think you are getting out of hand. Come here, let me knock some sense back in your mind. It only took him a moment to flicker in front of a terrified Naruto and another to swing the wooden stick towards his head. Enjoy the punishment. His eyes widened for a millisecond when the boy abruptly vanished from his sight, leaving behind small torrents of flames and smoke. I know your Shunshin too, Shisui ni. A boisterous laugh forced Shisui to turn his head towards the pond. Interesting. The Uchiha mumbled when he finally discerned what must have happened. For starters, the Naruto who was taunting him was not even the real Naruto in the first place. He was just a clone made up of fire chakra, while the original was hiding inside the pond from the moment he used his fireball jutsu. How did you get there? He asked, no doubt surprised by the skills of the boy. That level of proficiency in the fire element was unheard of at his age, especially when it was not even his primary element. Not even his ancestor, the infamous Uchiha Kagami, was this skilled with fire nature in his childhood. Naruto grinned, his teeth shining brightly in the radiance of the sun. I saw that Kakashi guy doing this same thing with his lightning chakra and I really loved it. So after days of practice, I was able to do it with fire chakra. He answered, completely missing the look of surprise on his brother's face. When? Naruto blinked, a little confused due to the question. Huh, what do you mean by when? Shisui shook his head. I meant when did you visit the village last time? He asked. Finally understating what his mentor meant, Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Oh, hee. 4 days ago. His honest answer silenced the Uchiha prodigy for a moment. I see, Shisui hummed with a thoughtful expression on his face. You need to stop going so close to that part of the village, Naruto. The people there are dangerous and unpredictable, you know. His suggestion fell on deaf ears as the boy plainly ignored his words. You're worrying about nothing, Ni-san. I've lived there most of my life and except for the insults and glares, no one has tried to do anything to me. Naruto argued back, trying to beat some sense in his brother's head. Ayame-ne-chan and Tsukiji-chan live there too. So you can't stop me from going there. Shisui could have objected again but chose not to due to the emotions the boy seemed to emanate at the mention of Ayame. That girl, he knew her very well. After all, she was the only one who managed to gain his interest in this accursed village. She is weak though, he added as his mind recalled the words of the people who were close to her. If rumors were anything to go by, then the girl once tried to join the Shinobi Academy but was forced to drop out as the teachers there deemed her as a total failure. She is weak, he mumbled out loud and had to evade a kunai that was tossed by none other than his pupil. She is not weak, she is kind, Naruto harshly whispered. How many times did he have to tell people? Ayame was not weak. Violence and power were something she refused to give into. They were useless to her, and that's why he had promised to keep her safe. If she was not going to spill blood, then he would do it for her, and for her sake. There were very few people he wanted to protect. She was one of them. I know, Naruto, I was just recalling people's words about her. Shisui smiled at his cute little student. But they were not wrong though. If she had joined the academy, then she would have died on her first mission because of her mentality. Kind people are bound to die on the battlefield, Naruto. Not under my watch, Shisui. Shisui blinked in confusion, head tilting a little as he tried to understand the meaning behind that statement. Huh. I said no one close to me will die under my watch. The blonde answered, his voice filled with nothing but determination and power. I'll even conquer death if it tries to touch any of you. The Shunshin prodigy of the Uchiha clan smirked. He could distinguish it, the rambunctious hunger for power resting deep within those deep blue eyes of the child. It was as enormous as his own. Bold claims, Naruto, he whispered, but amusement replaced surprise on his face when Naruto smirked at him. Say whatever you want, Ni-san, but even you know I will be more powerful than you in the future. If you say so, kid. Naruto stuck his tongue out at him. You're just jealous because you can't move as fast as me. All the words which were meant to taunt the teen perished in his mouth when his brother abruptly faded away from his sight. No, he gulped when he sensed Shisui's chakra behind him. 1, 2, 3. You should always be aware of your surroundings, Naruto. I taught you better than that. A shiver ran down his spine when his ear caught the sound of a stick chiseling through the wind. The suffering was inevitable, but that did not mean Naruto would not try to escape. Who knows, he might end up avoiding the punishment. Oh my, Ayame-ne-chan is coming here with my favorite ramen, he exclaimed, convening as much shock as he could in his voice. Sharingan flashed to the mentioned direction for a second before returning back to their main prey. Did you really think I would fall for that again? All of your tricks are useless, Naruto, he scoffed at the boy who was glued to his place. Well, you did last time. He could not complete his statement as the sheer force behind the strike was enough to send him flying towards the dense forest of Konoha. Shisui huffed, his eyes crinkling in irritation. He deserved that, he mumbled while a small part of him could not help but worry about the boy. Did I hit him too hard? The smugness left his face as thoughts of a bleeding or injured Naruto began to invade his mind. Naruto, he immediately shouted, the concern increasing inside him by each passing second. Naruto, his warm voice took a sharp turn while his devilish eyes jumped in action to analyze his surroundings for the presence of the boy. A strange feeling rippled inside his abdomen when he could not sense the boy. Naruto, his feet began to trek towards the dense forest, crushing everything that dared to appear in his path. Ah, is Shisui worried about me? Shisui stopped when he heard a voice from the trees above him. Naruto, he mumbled with a surprised expression on his face. What was the kid thinking while pulling this meaningless prank on him? Had he forgotten what an Uchiha could do to people when they get worried about someone they love? Here, Shisui almost fell over in surprise when the boy abruptly landed on his shoulders, dropping both of his feet slowly on his chest. Now let's go back home, shall we? Naruto exclaimed, blinking owlishly at the teen who refused to move an inch ahead. Oi, he yelled in hopes that the man would hear him out, but unfortunately, Shisui totally ignored him. Naruto, the boy giggled, entirely dismissing the threat hidden in his brother's tone. Come on, let's get back to our house, Ni-san. I will make you an arazushi. Shisui remained silent for a while, appearing as if he was contemplating the offer. Fine. He gently grasped Naruto's calves and took a step forward. Ooh. Bright blue eyes stared at the view in front of them with amazement. Moderately crowded streets, brightly decorated shops, and a gentle cold wind that seemed to engulf everything gave rise to a view even more amazing than any other place he had seen in his short life. I still don't understand, Shisui ni. Why do people hate your clan so much? Look at it, how can you hate something so beautiful? An appalled Naruto turned his eyes over to his side where his mentor was walking silently as they traversed through one of the most famous streets of the Uchiha clan compound. Seriously, what was wrong with people abhorring a clan just because the members of that clan had strange eyes? Naruto could not find a sense in their reasoning. Those people sound like kids when they give me that excuse, ya know. Shisui's legs tensed at the question as he found himself cornered due to his duties and feelings. On one hand, he wanted to tell Naruto the real reason behind the hate, but on the other hand, his duty as a clan member stopped him from doing that. Forget duty, his own heart sometimes refused to do that because he knew that one day he would have to tell Naruto the truth. The boy would start hating the clan too, and in between that hate, their bond would be severed. The people of our village hate many things for no good reason, Naruto. You of all the people should know it very well, he finally answered, staring at a tree located a few meters away from them. The plants of this village were sowed in the ground that was filled with hate and love. Each day, that plant sprouts numerous seeds, some of hate while others of love amidst this garden of peace. It's upon us to decide which seed we pick up from the garden. Shisui finished and his Mangekyo flared within his eyes, staring at the unknown figure that was hiding behind the shadows of the trees beside them. I see. Oblivious to everything that was going on around him, Naruto hummed, a thoughtful look plastered on his small face. Sometimes, you talk in a very complicated way, Shisui ni. Even more than Itachi ni Sama. A very bright smile appeared on Shisui's lips. But you always understand everything, Naruto. Even as complicated as we are. The smile turned into a small chuckle when Naruto began to argue over his recent statement. Naruto's beet red face and the pout on his lips were a sight to behold, a sight that Shisui wanted to protect from everyone, even from his own clan and the roots of his village. Anyways, you haven't told me about your decision yet, Naruto. The small boy blinked at him. What decision? He inquired. Shisui nearly faltered in his steps. Leave it to Naruto to be the most intelligent and idiotic child of his generation at the same time. You already forgot? He asked, and when the boy nodded his head in positive, a laugh escaped his lips. Oh Naruto, why are you the way that you are? Don't ever change. His laughs became louder when the child pouted at him. You really forgot about my offer, huh? He smirked. What offer? Naruto paused when he finally recalled the meeting that he had with Shisui a few weeks ago. It was a normal meeting, just like hundreds of others they had in the past year, until his brother decided to surprise him with an unexpected question. A question that froze his mind and heart when he first heard it. Do you want to live in my house? I mean, if you want, we can live together, you know. Single quote. Naruto's heart again went into a frenzy as he recalled that question. No matter how many times he recalls it, the amount of shock it disseminates never lessens. You remember it now. The boy was jolted out of his thoughts and glanced at his brother, who was smiling gently when he saw nervousness. Pretentious and tough as he might act in front of others, Shisui was one of the most gentle and cheerful people Naruto had ever met in his life, even more than Sayuri. The amount of love and kindness Shisui had shown him in the past year knew no bounds. From doing small things like helping him clean his apartment to going as far as sharing the precious mementos that his parents had left him with Naruto, Shisui left no stone unturned. It was due to Shisui's love and kindness that Naruto found yet another reason to keep visiting him. Every day and evening of his were spent in the Uchiha compound, even when the Hokage had warned him about the clan and their disastrous eyes. He finally opened his mouth to speak but closed it again when the words of Hokage rang inside his mind. They are strange people, Naruto-kun. They don't like outsiders like us in their compound. I suggest you stop visiting there entirely, including other clans entirely. I don't wish to see you get hurt. Single quote. Was the Hokage right about the Uchiha? Naruto did not know. He had not seen many to corroborate his theory, but the ones who he had seen and met with were completely different from what the Hokage had told him. Shisui, Itachi, Makoto, and Sayuri were some of the kindest people in his world, and he did not know why someone would be afraid of them or their eyes. Naruto. His heart quivered with warmth when Shisui's soft voice entered his ears. For someone who was supposed to be a ruthless shinobi and a monster because of his eyes, his brother, Shisui was very gentle whenever he spoke to him, except when training, of course. I don't think I can live with you, Ni-san. A gut-wrenching silence fell upon the two as they continued to walk towards their respective homes. After a few more painful moments, Shisui finally wandered his eyes over to Naruto's face. "Why?" he spoke, his voice even weaker than a whisper. For the first time after a whole year, he was feeling sad and empty. Why? Because his brother, a boy whom he had raised with utmost care and love, had just rejected his heartfelt request. No problem, he can always continue to visit. Because I don't want to dye my hair black. Naruto's words froze him to his place. Also, I know you're very lazy. You'll make me clean all the dishes and do all the laundry while you sit around and do nothing in your so-called cool clothes. So no. The idling feeling of sadness in his heart was replaced with annoyance as soon as he heard Naruto's words. Oi, he yelled as tears began to flow down his cheeks. I'm not lazy, and he paused for a second to swallow back a sob. My clothes are very cool. Naruto shook his head in disappointment. No, they're not. All the Uchiha have bad fashion sense. He bit his tongue when he remembered something striking. Except for Makoto Oba-san and Sayuri. They wear nice clothes, he noted with a nod to his head. Shisui wiped off the tears from his face before Naruto could see them and then scoffed at him. Surely, you of all people should never talk about fashion, Naruto. He smirked when the boy paused in his walk and looked at him with an adorable pout on his face. Why, look at your own clothes, Naruto. You look like you are training yourself so hard just to die on your first C-class mission. Who wears orange? The younger boy flicked off the harsh jab with a sway of his small hands. I do, I like it, he answered. Also say whatever you want, I won't die on a mission, Shisui ni. I will become so powerful that the only way I could die is if I want to. Shisui was taken aback by the answer but decided not to comment on that. Death was something he wanted to keep constrained within jokes only. Well, good luck with that, Naruto, but promise me that you will change your clothing to something more suitable for a shinobi when you become powerful. I don't want to see a Madara or Hashirama level Naruto in an orange jumpsuit. The smile again returned to his lips as he imagined a Naruto standing on the top of a mountain, overlooking a battlefield while wearing an even more horrendous set of orange clothing. He did not why, but the whole scenario just seemed funny to his mind. Fine, I'll change my clothes, but I need orange in it. Well, did I tell you that a set of badass clothing is complimentary with my offer? Naruto finally looked at Shisui and stared at him for a while before responding. I won't do the dishes. You're on your own with that. His rebuttal earned him a smile from the older boy. Sure. Shisui placed his head above Naruto's head and ruffled his bright blonde hair. Then I can live with you, Shisui ni. I'm honored. As you should be, and also. Shisui was surprised when everything went silent all of a sudden. Confused, he looked at Naruto for an explanation, but words perished in his mouth when his eyes saw something they have rarely seen on his face before. Tears. Single quote. His heart sank into the sea of sorrow as he stared at the tears that were flowing down Naruto's cheeks freely with no one there to stop them. Thank you. Shisui could have asked a million questions at that moment but abstained when Naruto lunged at him and engulfed him in a bone-crushing hug. It was a common gesture of gratitude, especially coming from a child, but for Shisui it was the most precious moment of her life. Thank you for everything that you have done for me, Shisui ni. Naruto's apartment. The moment he entered his old apartment, a wave of nostalgia washed over him, filling his mind with countless memories of the past, some sweet while others bitter and sad. This is my last day here. He couldn't help but frown as he stared at the dull and rugged walls of the apartment, the same walls which had protected him from the onslaught of many cold winds of the nights and had concealed his voice from others whenever he cried himself to sleep. Some might call it a hellhole because of its appearance and gloomy atmosphere, but deep inside he couldn't deny the fact that over the course of time, he had grown to like the place. Why, when no one was there to protect him, this place gave him a safe shelter to live in and grow up. Although he could argue that his experience here was not that great, Naruto could never deny that in the past, when he had nowhere to go to, his apartment was the only place where he truly felt home. But I'll be living with Shisui now. Just like that, the lingering feeling of sadness departed from his heart, leaving only warmth behind. From tomorrow on, he would be starting a new journey of his life on a path where he would undoubtedly face countless difficulties due to his status as a pariah, but Naruto was ready for anything if it meant he could live near Sayuri and Shisui all the time. That was all he wanted. I don't have much to pack up. He could only scowl slightly as he noted the lack of clothing and any possessions that he could take to his new home. There was nothing to pack, a reality that made his heart twinge a little in pain. Except for the gifts that the Uchiha family had given him in the past, he really did not have anything at all, nothing to call his own. Wait, I have something. He stood up on his feet and began to walk towards the closet as he remembered a gift that he had received from that ninja who wore a dog mask. What was his name? He tried to remember that, but for some reason, his mind was unable to do that. Maybe because I haven't seen him for a while now. He mused and began to scan the ramen-filled closet for the gift. He continued to search for it for a while until he finally found what he was looking for. A necklace. His eyes analyzed the beautiful ornament for a while before they saw something interesting hanging within. Surrounded by countless translucent red and yellow beads that were stationed around it carefully, in the middle of the necklace rested a small but beautiful orange-colored diamond. At first glance, Naruto did not give it much thought, but on closer inspection, he saw that there were some unique markings scattered all over the jewel. What are these? Thud. Hearing the sound, Naruto immediately stashed the necklace into his pocket and turned around to face the intruder. He blinked when he saw no one there. But I'm sure I heard. His eyes grew wide and his breaths became hasty when his eyes finally saw the intruder. It was frightening and beautiful at the same time. Greetings, Naruto-sama. The fear inside his heart ascended to an inconceivable level when the intruder opened its mouth and spoke. Who are you? He shrieked in horror, no doubt scared of the being that was lounging on the ground without any care of the world around it. I'm Aoda, Naruto-sama. Naruto gulped and stepped back a little. Aoda, he whispered as he stared at the tiny white snake who for some reason, refused to move an inch from his position. Yes, Naruto-sama, the small snake answered, his head still leaned low in order to show the much-deserved respect to his true master. What are you and why have you come here? Aoda, or the minion snake rather, through which Aoda was contacting Naruto, playfully hissed at the boy and smiled a little when Naruto immediately retreated back in shock after hearing the hiss. I'm Aoda, Naruto-sama. He whispered again, this time with warmth and affection. The primary summoning of your father and a beloved friend of your mother. Ruination. The world he knew crumbled around him. Nothing made sense. He couldn't understand what was happening at this moment. The walls that surrounded and sheltered him his whole life appeared as nothing more than a mere sculpture of wood and concrete. The clothes on his back, which he had cherished since his birth, now looked nothing more than a quagmire of low-class cotton threads. He couldn't believe the words that came out of the snake's mouth. Never did he dare to hope to find out anything about his parents. There was an opportunity in front of him. He could learn about his family. You know my parents. The strange word rolled around in his mouth. It brought about a euphoric feeling and joy, something that he never thought he would experience. It was astounding how a single word had the power to both ruin and make his day. He was disheartened that knew about his parents yet still chose to keep it a secret from him. On the other hand, this was an exciting moment, he would finally learn about his family. Yes, Naruto-sama. Naruto's heart skipped a beat. Who? He immediately asked the serpent. Who were they? What were their names? Question after question began to evacuate his mouth at a rapid pace, and before he knew he was standing right in front of the very creature he was afraid of a while ago. The tiny snake hissed at him in mirth. You are just like your mother, Naruto-sama. Reckless and bold, Aoda whispered. If Kushina-sama were alive, she would be overjoyed to see how you've grown up to be just like her. Kushina. A strange emotion stirred inside Naruto's heart as he whispered the name. It was lovely and cool, just like his Just saying the name out loud filled him with incomprehensible joy. Yes, that was her name. Naruto looked down and smiled, his eyes filled with tears and countless emotions. Sadness being at the forefront, but with underlying happiness. He still found it difficult to form words to respond to Aoda's statements. They were shocking, heartbreaking, and enlightening all at once. Once Naruto had learned how to speak, he regularly asked the Hokage for any information regarding his parents. Despite his best efforts, all his inquiries were evaded or ignored by Hiruzen. Anyone who knew of Naruto could see the sheer desperation emanating from him. Orphaned children all had an intense desire to know of their parents. Even more so with Naruto, since no one would speak anything about his parents. Not a single word. Kushina, he whispered again and smiled, all the while stifling the whimpers that were beginning to escape his mouth. I always wanted to know her name. My mother's name. Tears finally escaped the confinement of his eyes and began to trickle down his dry cheeks, wetting them with shades of grief and suffering. Aoda couldn't help but sympathize with him, as there were very few individuals who had suffered a fate as horrible as Naruto. Orphaned from the very day of his birth and marginalized by the village. It was a life of hardship that would break anyone. Yet his own master's son had to live that life. What was she like? What was her favorite food? What did she use to do to pass time? Was she a powerful ninja? The excitement and sadness in Naruto's voice resonated with Aoda. The same people, whom his master sacrificed his life for, had tortured the boy's soul. The happiness of learning about his parents was overshadowed by his overwhelming loneliness. The serpent paused and closed his mouth. The emotions rolling off of Naruto were affecting his self-control and reasoning. Calm yourself, Aoda, he berated himself. She was an amazing and beautiful individual, Naruto-sama. He finally managed to speak something naturally, hiding the tinge of sadness. Like you, ramen was her favorite food. It was a trait that your father shared with her. They both were ramen enthusiasts. A small smile slithered its way to the serpent as he saw tears vanish from the child's face. She chose to pass time by sewing clothes for you. Shirts and trousers were her choices. She wanted you to be as cool as Minato. Aoda couldn't stop a chuckle from escaping his mouth as he remembered how much time Kushina used to spend stitching and sewing. The amount of devotion she had towards her family was truly admirable. Minato and Kushina were inseparable, even death couldn't break them apart. Naruto's mind paused yet again. Minato. He blinked at the snake in confusion, but that didn't last long as he finally realized the connection between the two. That's my father. His eyes widened as he connected the dots. That is correct, Naruto-sama. Minato-sama was your father and my summoner. The snake complimented the boy for guessing it right. You are the son of Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. More tears descended down Naruto's face. My parents. The small boy fell down to the ground. Kushina. His body shivered as he whispered the name of his mother, and before he knew he was crying uncontrollably on the cold floor of his apartment. Minato. Kushina Minato. A loud whimper escaped his lips and echoed throughout the room, but he didn't care. Right now, he wanted to savor the moment. In his short and scarred life, there were very few moments when he had cried in front of others. The act made him look weak in their eyes, but it didn't matter today. He just wanted to cry his heart out. Why? He finally learned about his family. The knowledge he desperately searched for his entire life. The name of his parents. Kushina. His mother. His lovely mother had a great name just like him, and he was glad that they shared the same surname. It made him feel closer to her. Minato. Although the name wasn't as cool as Kushina, it was still pretty awesome too, and Naruto was sure his father was just as awesome as his mother. Who he was kidding. Both the names were awesome in his books, and he was sure he would adore them for the rest of his life. The names were precious, even more than his own life, because unlike his life, they actually held importance to him. Tap. A single tear trickled through his cheek and fell down to the ground, staining it with sadness. Tap. Another one followed soon. Tap. Another. Tap. Soon his whole face was covered in tears, with some still trailing down his cheeks. Naruto-sama. Tear-filled blue eyes veered towards the small snake who was now resting on his arm, something that made him flinch, but he managed to control his reactions. He hummed. Would you like to know more about your parents? More. Why yes. The wheels of destiny began to swirl ominously as Aota opened his mouth to narrate the story of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. Ooh, the natural beauty of Konoha never failed to mesmerize Naruto. It didn't matter the time of year, nor the season for him to appreciate the village. Yet, there was something unique about spring. The gentle colors emerging from a cold winter added another layer of charm on Konoha. Those colors made it even more beautiful in his eyes. Lush green meadows covered with tall evergreen trees, lakes, and pink flower petals. Beautiful was the only word that he could use to describe the beauty of his home. Even then, he admitted it wasn't enough. If he had to elaborate his thoughts somehow, then he would describe the beauty of spring to be similar to Sayuri's smile. Mystical and strangely calming. Yes, that's how it was. Beautiful and calming. It didn't matter what negative emotions coursed through his body, her smile would always cheer him up, just how spring does. Naruto. A smile, far more beautiful than the cherry blossoms surrounding him, blossomed on his lips when he heard Sayuri call out his name. It always felt nice and calming hearing it. Yes, he didn't want to make her wait and immediately responded. What's on your mind? Naruto blinked as a small wave of confusion quarreled within his eyes. Huh, what are you talking about? He couldn't help but ask. You shuffle your feet when you're thinking about something, as rare as that is. So, what's on your mind? As fast it came, the wave of confusion dried away from his eyes when he finally understood what she meant. Typical Sayuri, always worrying about him. You're worrying over nothing, Sayuri. I was just thinking what I would do if Shisui stopped helping with the dishes and cleaning. Fireworks of joy exploded inside his heart when a small smile slithered its way towards Sayuri's lips. HMPH. The explosion ceased when the smile morphed into a pout as she glared at him with those pale eyes of her. Idiot. I don't worry about you because I like doing it. I do so since you don't look after yourself or your well-being. You're my best friend. We don't hide things from each other. Even though she couldn't see him, Naruto was sure she could hear his smile as she gently bonked him on the head. Ah, you care about me, Sayuri. He mewed at her and before she could move an inch, he engulfed her in a tight hug. I'm lucky to have a friend like you. The battle of strength between the two lasted for a few more seconds before Sayuri finally gave up and relaxed in his embrace. I know, she whispered, her voice as soothing as ever. I also feel the same as you. What? Countless pink petals swirled around the thin cherry blossom branches and rustled past Sayuri, contrasting with her raven hair as it rippled harmoniously in the breeze. I'm also lucky to have a friend like you. You're not only my best friend. You're all I have. Her gorgeous pale black orbs met his cobalt blue eyes and for a moment, Naruto was unable to speak or even think of a single word. He opened his mouth to respond but words wouldn't form. Though short and to the point, Sayuri's words held something that he had no hope of rivaling. Affection. He knew there was nothing he could say that could match the amount of affection that she had for him. It was boundless. Something that people around him hadn't failed to tell him countless times, especially his brother. Just after a week of moving in with him, Shisui had told him about a very unique curse that afflicted the Uchiha clan. Naruto would be lying if he said he wasn't scared of it. The curse of hatred. Contrary to its name, the curse had nothing to do with hate, well not in the beginning at least. It all started with an emotion that the people of his world called love, and ended with the widely known hate. The Uchiha love and cherish more than any other clan, yet we hide it as if we are ashamed of it. When an Uchiha cares about someone, they will do everything to keep that person safe and will shower them with an unimaginable amount of affection. But, if they end up losing that person, then the curse begins to take over their mind and grants them these eyes that see nothing but hatred. We are shinobi, and well, the curse is inevitable. Those were the words that his brother had recited to him on that day, and since then, the amount of affection and respect he had for Sayuri reached higher levels. Why? Because those who could see refused to be his friends or treat him like a human being. Sayuri came into his life and befriended him. She became his light, even though she had none in her own life. He would never be able to care about her as much as she did him. His skepticism of people kept everyone at an arm's length, even those he considered precious to him. Sayuri on the other hand was just pure. Despite being blind, she didn't let that dictate how she wanted to live. She befriended him when no one else would. He knew she cared for him deeply, and the fact he couldn't do the same terrified him. Naruto. Sparkling white pearls of liquid stained the green grass beneath him as a silent whimper escaped from his lips. He hummed softly and looked away from her so that she couldn't hear his heavy breaths. Why are you crying? Naruto froze when her small hands made contact with the soft skin of his cheeks and wiped away the remains of tears that were left there. He couldn't speak. His mind was refusing to ruin this instance and wanted him to just enjoy this moment with his friend. His lips quivered as his heart and mind waged a war against each other. His heart begged him to open up to his friend and let her in. His mind demanded he remain silent and strong for Sayuri's sake. In the end, he listened to his mind and bit back the remaining sobs that threatened to escape his mouth. I'm fine. Even when he tried his best to sound normal, he couldn't hide the cracks in his voice, and they only increased when she gently flicked his nose with her finger. Idiot. Sayuri smiled. How many times do I have to tell you that you shouldn't hide your pain from me? She knew her words had the desired effect when he went completely silent. He could hide his presence from her when he put in the effort. Now she couldn't even hear his breaths. I'm not hiding anything OWW. Her smile widened slightly when he yelped in pain as she pinched him on the cheeks. It was his weak spot and she could tell it had something to do with the whiskers there. Liar. She scolded him in a stern tone, something she had picked up from her father. She knew very well how much her friend feared her father. It was rather funny. I know when you're crying, Naruto. Her smile wavered a little when he didn't respond. Naruto. Her voice took a soft turn as she turned in his direction. A sigh of relief escaped her lips. What happened? You're not being yourself. She was concerned. Naruto had been acting incredibly strange all day. He didn't fight back against her verbal jabs. The biggest warning sign was when he didn't vehemently deny that was crying. He claimed only weak people cry in front of others, and he wasn't weak. Nothing. There's just a lot on my mind right now. As much as he wanted his words to appear believable, Sayuri could still tell he was lying, but she didn't interrupt him. She murmured softly and turned her head towards the supposed direction where the cherry blossom trees were in full bloom. A comfortable silence fell upon the clearing as the two began to cherish the scenery around them. From the lush green grass beneath them to the small creek that was running through the labyrinth of the cherry blossoms, nothing was left untouched by their eyes, at least that was the case for one of them. The other was happy, simply enjoying the company of her friend. Naruto. Sayuri finally opened her mouth, choosing to break the comfortable silence. Her voice was as sweet as the chirping of birds around them. Naruto, who was enjoying the beauty of the spring, blinked and turned his eyes towards his friend when he heard her whisper. Yes, he responded quickly as he could see she was uncertain about something. It was written all over her face. Can I ask you something? Of course, Sayuri, you know you can just ask, right? Okay. Naruto's heart slowed down for a second as he noticed slivers of uncertainty flickering on her face. She was sad. He could see that something was bothering her. Otherwise, she wouldn't sound so miserable in front of him. Can you tell me what the cherry blossom trees look like? Cherry blossoms. A wave of sadness drowned Naruto's heart as he listened to her sorrowful words. Her words yet again reminded him of the reality that they had been trying to ignore. Her blindness. A sad reality that they couldn't avoid, even when they tried their best. It was an unfortunate part of Sayuri's life and therefore, a part of his life too. Naruto knew he could run away for a while, but sooner or later, it would always catch up with him and hurt him. The only way he could help her was by curing her eyes, and to accomplish that, he needed to become as powerful as the first Hokage of their village and the god of the shinobi world. Hashirama Senju. The man was his idol, and something in his heart told him that if he tried hard he would be able to achieve the feats that man used to perform when he was alive. That included healing organs without making a single hand seal. Some might think Naruto was being a naive daydreamer for thinking he could become as powerful as the first Hokage. For him, it wasn't a far-fetched dream. They already had many things in common. The primary reasons being, having multiple chakra natures and being a friend with an Uchiha. Now the only thing he needed to do was start to hone his skills in medical ninjutsu and find someone who could guide and teach him about natural energy. It was a faraway dream, and until he could gain the strength to make his promise true, the least he could do was become Sayuri's eyes. With a small smile on his face and a fresh mind, he turned his eyes towards her. Sure, he whispered and grasped her hand gently to soothe her worries. You know darkness, right? The girl tilted her head. What kind of question is that? I know it very well. Naruto tightened his hold around her hand. Just hear me out. That's how the bark of the tree looks like. A pole covered in the beautiful colors of the night with gashes decorating the whole body. As for the petals, he paused and raised his other hand to gently brush the side of her face. They are just like your cheeks when you get embarrassed. Pale and fluffy clouds of white, that can often be found flushed in the blushing color of pink. Also, they are as erratic as you are, and when their mood worsens, they fall from their branches and meet the cold ground where dew takes over them. Tears. Morning dew, I meant. Naruto stuck his tongue out sheepishly. Oh, Sayuri murmured, truly thankful for everything that he had done for her just now. What he had described was incredible. Even though she couldn't see, she could visualize what they looked like. It was a beautiful sight. She was sure she may cry at any given moment, but she steeled her resolve. She didn't want to ruin the moment her friend had created for her. Gaining control over her emotions again, she was about to praise him but stopped when an amusing question popped into her mind. Naruto. She immediately turned towards him. Can you describe yourself too? Once again, Naruto was surprised by his friend's request. It was unusual for her to act like this. She never cared about her blindness since she had met him. But then again, it was a small request, and him being him, he could never deny her anything. Sure, he smiled at her, this time more brilliantly as he couldn't see any traces of sadness on her face. It was still as vibrant as ever. Okay, describe myself, huh? He paused and began to ponder over potential ways he could describe himself to his friend while not using colors. Aha! An excited cry escaped his mouth as he placed his fist on the palm of his hand. You can feel the heat on your skin, right? Sayuri blinked, confused with the words her friend was using for the explanation. Why yes. Well, the color of my hair is as warm and bright as the sunlight, Naruto mumbled, pleased with himself for coming up with an analogy as good as that. As for my eyes, they are as gentle and cool as the water that is running inside that stream. And what about your cheeks? A shade of red exploded on his cheeks as Sayuri gently grasped them with her hands. They are soft and sensitive. Red turned scarlet. Hey, they are not sensitive. OWW. Why did you pinch them? To prove my point. They are sensitive. No, they aren't. Naruto huffed and tried to get away from her, but Sayuri stopped him by increasing the strength behind her hold. Cute. Oi. What was that? My mother calls you cute. What? Shut up. I think she's right. Sayuri, stop. Oi Sayuri, screamed a gleeful Naruto as he ran through the wide sheet of white snow, trying to chase his best friend, Uchiha Sayuri, who was running in front of him. Hee. His smile widened as he heard her pleasant giggles. Stop, he shouted again, feigning a mask of annoyance to trick her, but the girl kept running. It was amazing how even after being blind, she could run so carelessly, but then again, there were hardly any obstacles for her in the snow. You can't catch me, Naruto. I'm faster than you. Sayuri, who was enjoying every second of their little contest, stuck her tongue out at him and giggled as her small snow boots splashed small lumps of snow on the boy's face. Oi, she giggled when he screamed at her again, probably too tired to continue the game anymore. What? Moving to the side, she glanced over her shoulder and snickered when she heard his footsteps behind her. From the sound of them and his irregular breaths, she could tell he was trying his best to control his pace on the slippery sheet of ice but was failing miserably. I can't run on this snow anymore. I've just finished my training with Shisui and I'm tired, Sayuri. Naruto groaned, irritation apparent in his voice. Yet, he still didn't stop running because he feared that if he did then he would lose sight of her. That fear alone was enough to keep him going. Channel some chakra to your feet, Naruto. Ni-san once told me that it helps in walking on slippery surfaces when you are tired. Naruto didn't waste any time. In a blink, he closed his eyes and began to manifest the hidden energy within him. Let me try, he whispered as he grabbed a handful of chakra from the large reservoir and channeled it to his feet. Did it work? Slowly, He opened his eyes and smiled widely when he noticed that he was having no trouble with the snow anymore. Yada. Raising his fists in the air, he began to celebrate his success, something that didn't go unnoticed by the Uchiha girl who also joined him in his celebration and began to clap her hands in awe. "See," she whispered, gaining the attention of the boy. "I told you it would work. It's very similar to water walking that Shisui had taught you a few years ago, Naruto. Now, let's continue our game." Within seconds, she was back at running aimlessly through the snow. "Wait for me." Naruto didn't waste any time and began to run behind her. "No. HMPH. Come on, Naruto. If you're going to get tired like this at the smallest of games, then how are you going to save me from bad people?" That did the work, and in a blink of an eye, Naruto was beside her, looking at her with a newfound determination in his eyes. "Hee. Don't worry, Sayuri, as long as I'm here, no one can do anything to you. Not even the Hokage." Naruto pouted at the intentional jab. "HMPH, you always tease me like this. But yes, not even the Hokage won't be able to do anything to you. I'll become so powerful that everyone, including Hokage and every other cage, will stay away from you. My fear will keep them at bay, ha ha ha." What he meant to let out was a peal of malevolent laughter, but unfortunately, his voice was still too thin for that to happen. So instead, what came out of his mouth was a weak giggle that, by the way it sounded, couldn't even scare a fly. Hee. And if Sayuri's laughs were anything to go by, then she wasn't scared of it either. "You are so cute, Naruto," she managed to utter between her laughs. "Don't make fun of me, Sayuri. I'm not joking." His voice abruptly took a serious turn. "I'll destroy everything for you." The sincerity in his voice silenced the girl, and soon, a warm smile blossomed on her small face. "I know, Naruto. You don't have to tell me that." Her words gained her a smile from him, one that she couldn't see but sense easily due to the change in his chakra. Unfortunately, their perfect moment was spoiled when something unexpected occurred to Naruto. "You're my best OWWOWW. A sudden screech of pain left his mouth when his face collided with the steel pole that emerged out of nowhere in front of them, creating a sickening sound in the process. "Naruto." A half-conscious Naruto raised his hand and stopped her before she could come any closer to him. I'm fine." He tried to assure her and ease her worries, but his cracked voice and unintentional groaning told her everything she wanted to know. "No, you are not, Naruto." Before he could even move, Sayuri opened the little pouch on her jacket and drew out a healing salve, something that had become an essential commodity for her ever since she had begun to hang out with him. "Here." She reached out to his face with her free hand. "Guide me to the wound," and motioned him to guide her hand to the place where the injury had occurred. Naruto knew he couldn't stop her anymore, but still decided to try his luck for the last time. "It's nothing OWWWW. Everything he had in his mind vanished in a second when Sayuri pinched his swollen cheeks gently, earning a painful cry from him. "You're bleeding, Naruto. I can feel it, so sit silently and let me do my work." Sayuri's heated tone caught him off guard. She had never used that tone in front of him, so when she did, Naruto couldn't help but be surprised. A tinge of shame churned within him when he saw her scowl while her small fingers mended his wound. "You are so careless, Naruto," she murmured, increasing the shame within him even more. "I've told you so many times that you should always keep your eyes open, but you never listen to me. Now see what happened." Sometimes her complaints expired in her mouth when she felt his face shiver under her fingers. A little concerned, she glided her fingers near to the place below his eyes and frowned when she noticed traces of tears there. "Naruto." Her voice turned gentle and eyes, which were previously sparkling with rage, became soft as she smiled at him. You can cry in front of me," she whispered, now wiping the tears off his face. Naruto shook his head and bit back another sob. "No, only weak people cry in front of others." His answer was enough for Sayuri to deduce what he was feeling at that moment. "How am I going to become strong if I keep crying in front of you over small injuries?" The argument he made only cemented her earlier assumptions. "Crying doesn't make you weak, Naruto," she argued back in a soft tone. "My dad says that only the strongest of the shinobi have the courage to cry in front of their loved ones. A sliver of happiness bloomed inside her heart when he stopped shaking, indicating that he had stopped crying. The last few remaining tears fell from his cheeks when the boy finally raised his head and looked into her eyes. Really? He asked her, no doubt awed by the fact that a man like Fugaku thought like that. Sayuri nodded her head. Also, she nudged his wound lightly once more, earning a painful moan from him. Don't act tough and try to hide your wounds from me, Naruto. Just because I'm blind doesn't mean I'm not watching over you. Her softly spoken words rendered him silent for a second. I know, Sayuri. The smile on her face got more prominent. Then don't hide your pain from me, Naruto. I promise I will always be there to mend it. Ooh. A lone red eye was staring at the scene in front with trivial curiosity and sadness. The scenario was nostalgic, even more than what he had first presumed it would be. The conversation between the two children was surreal and managed to bring out infinite sad memories from the darkness of his heart. He is just like you. An unsettling voice echoed in his ears as his companion appeared beside him and let out a small chuckle of amusement. Yes, he didn't deny the claim and admitted it hesitantly. His companion was right. The boy was just like him. Alone, broken, and only held by a few people whom he cherished wholeheartedly. He is very much like me. But that wasn't the only reason why he was following the boy everywhere. The foremost was residing inside his body, waiting to burst out at any given moment and show its power to everyone. And the girl is just like her. The lone red eye burned with ominous fury as soon as his stupid partner spoke about her with his dirty mouth. You think so? He asked, his voice now taking a dangerous deep turn to intimidate the person. In response, his associate giggled gleefully, exposing those awful-looking sharp fangs to him. Of course, this girl Sayuri is like a ray of hope for Naruto in this dark and twisted world, just like she was yours. The man didn't respond for a while as he was too busy watching the interaction between the two innocent children. The happiness on the boy's face was contagious, his smile even more. It was as if he was looking at his younger self, bright and full of life. Sadly, he wasn't like that anymore. I can only imagine the destruction he would inflict upon this world if something happens to her. The intriguing tone of his partner didn't go well with the man. No, we will not do anything to her, he whispered as his shriveled hand pushed away some leaves from his sight. Sayuri holds no importance to us. The one who we need is Naruto. He is our target. Leaves rustled lightly as the atrocious-looking being inched a little closer to him and smiled. I never said we would be the one to perform the deed. I was just wondering, you know. After all, anything can happen in this world. The man hummed, still not satisfied with the given argument. His associate was hiding something significant. He could tell that just by looking at his unpleasant face for a few seconds. Still, what do you think the boy would do if he loses her, let's say, in upcoming years? A strange but familiar feeling stirred at the bottom of his gut. What would he do? He recited the question and was about to answer it but stopped amidst as his mind began to recall the horrors of that night. Blood, organs, and tears. He could remember everything vividly. After all, that night was the night that changed him and his life forever. I don't know. In the end, he couldn't answer that question. Even if the boy was just like him, Naruto's mind was still more mature than his when he was his age. The boy was a born genius, and his stay with Uchiha had only helped him become smarter with age. If faced with a similar situation, he was sure Naruto would choose a different path. Of course, you don't know. But why are you asking me these questions all of a sudden? Oh, it's nothing. Yet again, the man wasn't pleased with the response he got from the vile creature. If he wasn't sure before, then he was confident now. The creature was hiding something from him. Still, he decided to remain silent for the sake of his own sanity. Looking back at the children, he frowned when a strange feeling began to surge inside him. Uchiha Sayuri, Uzumaki Naruto. Ooh, look at Hinata-sama, yet again, going out with that little branch family vermin to God knows where. Yeah, how can she even bear his presence? Especially when his father is rumored to be plotting a rebellion against us. Maybe he is scheming to kill her. Yeah, I think you are right. Hazashi won't let his son stroll with the daughter of the clan head unless it's benefiting him somehow. Neji's face declined in sadness as his ears got filled with the heart-wrenching comments of his clan members. They were unbearable, but what made them even more horrible was the fact that instead of being directed towards him, they were being hurled towards his sister, Hinata. Why are they doing this to her? A quick glance at Hinata was enough for him to know that his sister wasn't cherishing the comments either. "Are you okay, Hinata-sama?" He couldn't help but ask her as they continued to walk towards her favorite garden, located just behind the vicinity of the Hokage monument. Lost in his thoughts, Neji didn't notice when Hinata peeked at him and began to smile. "Of course, Ni-sama," she answered, the smile on her lips wavering for a fraction of a second, a thing that didn't go unnoticed by her brother. "You can take Ko-san with you if you want. I won't mind." The sadness in his tone even surprised him, as it had been a long while since he had taken people's comments seriously, especially ones fired from the mouths of the people of Main Branch. "I can still hang out with my father." The sadness only increased as more insults began to reach his ears, filling him with an unimaginable amount of rage and sadness. It was disheartening to see how low people of the Main Branch could go to humiliate him and his family. It was like the only reason they existed was to make his life more miserable and empty. At first, their insults used to be indirect, hurled mostly towards his family, but ever since he began to hang out with his sister Hinata, everything worsened. Now, they no longer wanted to insult him. Instead, they wanted to punish him. Hinata-sama, the only Main Branch member who accepted him for what he was and gave him hope when no one even dared to come close to him. The admiration she held for him was precious and gave him a reason to be better, and in return, what did he give her? Nothing but sadness and hate from her people. Just because of him, she couldn't make any friends either, as no one wanted to be associated with someone who had ties with a Branch family scum. Yet, she never showed any signs of resentment towards him and always greeted him with that sweet smile on her face. "Why would I want to leave you, Ni-sama?" Hinata's feeble voice brought Neji out of his thoughts. "You are my brother." A small innocent smile flickered on her lips and soothed his worries. "I don't care about these people's comments. They're not a part of my family. You are. But, don't try to argue with me now, brother." Hesitantly, she placed her hand on his shoulder and squeezed it just like her mother used to do with her when she was a child. "Remember, you once said that you would follow every command of mine, right?" Neji lowered his head a little and nodded at her. "Why, yes. Then it's my order that you will not pay attention to anyone around us and will try your best to make new friends outside our clan." The giggles that followed her declaration calmed him immediately, something that didn't go unnoticed by Hinata as she finally let go of his shoulder. "Okay." The shame got replaced by joy and frown with a smile as Neji began to walk beside her again. "Ooh, what happened, Sayuri? Why are you so silent today?" A confused Naruto asked his friend as they strolled in the thick blanket of ice splashed on the forest located behind the Hokage monument. "I don't know, Naruto." She was lying, Naruto concluded without even looking at her. When it came to each other, both of them were terrible liars. "I see. Still, there must be some reason why you became so silent, you know. Earlier, you were so happy." Sayuri stopped walking and looked down at the ground to hide her eyes from him. Although lightless, they were still very much filled with emotions, and Naruto was one of the few people who could read them effortlessly. "No, there are no hidden reasons this time, Naruto," she whispered, hoping that the boy would stop questioning her anymore, but unfortunately, Naruto didn't. "HMPH, fine, don't tell me anything and keep your secrets to yourself, Sayuri." The discomfort in his tone was fake, but the sadness wasn't. He was sad, and he had all the reason to be so, as his best friend was trying to hide something from him. "But remember, if you are going to keep secrets, then so will I." Sayuri's resolution didn't last long and finally fell before the might of Naruto's sadness. The boy knew her very well, actually too well for her own good. He knew what he had to do whenever he wanted to get the truth out of her mouth. "Okay, fine," she murmured, her voice as low as a whisper. "I'm sad because Daisuke made fun of me again." Her answer earned her a soft growl of anger from Naruto, something she had already speculated would happen, and that's why she was trying to remain silent about it. "That boy is still troubling you." She nodded her head slowly. "Even after getting scolded by Itachi and Shisui-ni?" "Yes." Naruto growled yet again, this time with more anger. What does he want from you? You haven't done anything to him, yet he still mocks you at every chance he gets. The anger was beginning to take the form of a storm inside him, fluctuating his chakra and mind. But before it could develop any more, Sayuri stopped him by grabbing his hand and squeezing it gently. Stop, Naruto. There's no need to get so angry about it. I'm sure he won't do it again. For what? A few weeks or a month? His words silenced her, and she couldn't do anything but look at him with a sorry look on her face. Naruto was right. Daisuke won't stop bullying her, not until she does something about it. I'm weak, Naruto. I can't do anything against him. Unveiling her weakness always felt terrible, especially in front of Naruto. The thought that he might leave her if she constantly appears weak in front of him frightened her. It made her feel like a useless person in her own eyes. Flick. Sayuri stumbled on her feet as the index finger of Naruto made contact with the base of her tiny nose and flicked it gently. Stupid Sayuri, what made you feel like that? His voice became gentle, so much that for a second, she believed she was talking to her mother as she was the only one in her family who had such a kind and calming voice. I. Shish. His finger traveled down to her lips and sealed them momentarily. You are not weak, Sayuri. Not at all. In fact, you're the bravest person I have ever met. Usually by now, she would have called him out for lying so carelessly in front of her, but this time something was different. She couldn't discover any trace of lies in his voice. Shisui ni, Itachi ni, and even your dad fail in comparison to you. Sure, they know powerful jutsus and own the Sharingan, but for me, those abilities are trivial in front of the strength that you possess, Sayuri. What do I possess? Me. I'm your strength, Sayuri. Now, that made her laugh a little. Hey, why are you laughing? I'm serious. His grumbling accompanied by the annoyed look that he had on his face was a sight to behold. Hee hee. More laughs continued to escape from her mouth. Naruto was about to retort with something but stopped when a foreign voice entered his ears. From the sound of it, it seemed like it belonged to a person around their age, and he wasn't disappointed when he saw two individuals appear from the darkness of the bushes around them. Hyuga. He immediately recognized them as their eyes were pretty similar to the Hyuga girl who his brother talks to a lot and mumbles about in his sleep. It wasn't long before their eyes met, and as a result, the girl among the two stopped her stride. Naruto tilted his head in confusion as he couldn't understand why she was behaving like that. After analyzing her face a little more, it finally clicked in his mind. I know her. She is the girl from that day. He smiled to himself as a long-forgotten memory struck his mind. Hinata. That was her name, and his assumption was proven right when the girl raised her head and smiled at him. Naruto. Who is Hinata? His smile got bigger. Let me tell you a story, Sayuri. Hokage office. Hokage's office was a place that was held in high regard throughout the whole village of Konoha. The huge hall of smooth stones and beautifully crafted wood was something that had been the center of engagement concerning everything, from small civilian affairs to tough war-provoking decisions, through the past generations. Currently, the place was occupied by the legendary Sandaime and his justly infamous friend Danzo, both of them staring at the crystal ball on the table with utmost awareness. It looks like Naruto has found some interesting people yet again. This time from the Hyuga clan. Hiruzen whispered as he continued to watch the interaction between the children curiously. Danzo, who was sitting beside him, wasn't looking pleased with the development, not at all. We are being fools once again, Hiruzen, the old man muttered, his voice filled with disdain and anger as he finally glanced at his friend. Can't you see what is happening? His question earned him a perplexed look from his friend. What are you trying to say, Danzo? In answer, the one-eyed man shook his head gently, no doubt discouraged with the response he got from his partner. Moments like these were the reason he hadn't and never would praise his teammate's reign as the Hokage. Even after committing so many heinous acts, his friend Hiruzen's was still stuck in the chains of morals. Unlike him, who had already freed himself of everything, Hiruzen was still prone to moralistic guilt and lacked the will to make tough decisions for the betterment of their village. That's why he needed to be there for him so that he could help him. We are making a grave mistake by allowing our Jinchuriki to develop trivial emotions like love and kindness. He doesn't need them, He paused to see the reaction of his friend and was more than pleased to see he was listening to him. They are useless for a weapon like him. The only aspects he should be taught about are the opinions that we want him to live with. Hiruzen was taken aback by his friend's words. They were cold and shallow. Don't call him a weapon, Danzo. I know we need the fox inside him, but that doesn't mean we can sabotage his whole life for that. Just like everyone else, he deserves a normal life. It's his right, and we can't take that away from him. He argued back, his wrinkled eyes staring at his friend with scrutiny and a little resentment. Though the idea of a weapon sounded great for their village and its safety, that didn't mean they could just ruin a child's whole life for that. They, especially him, had already ruined Naruto's life as much as they could by their actions, negligence being the major one in his case, and now Hiruzen didn't want to interfere in the child's life anymore. He has no rights, Hiruzen. Not anymore. The moment Yondaime sealed that beast inside him, he became a weapon for our village, and a weapon should not have any rights. Its only duty is to protect our village and its people in dire times. Hiruzen was still not satisfied with the explanation. But, Hiruzen, there is a reason why the concept of Jinchuriki exists in our world. If they were meant to be ordinary people who should be allowed to live a normal life, then why would they be referred to as a human sacrifice? A complete silence claimed the room as Danzo began to explain himself to his friend. Jinchuriki is a sacrifice each village has to make in order to remain relevant and safe in our war-ridden world. As a Hokage, you must make that sacrifice. Raising his cane, Danzo positioned it on the chest of his friend. Our Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto, was already an orphan, which made him the perfect prospect for a weapon as he lacked those trivial emotions, but by allowing him to live with those scums, you placed the safety of our village in jeopardy. Utter silence followed the words of the one-eyed man. Hiruzen, the professor who had never lost an argument, was at a loss for words. What his friend had just addressed was true, absolutely true. Jinchuriki, also known as human sacrifice, was conceived only for one single purpose, and that was the village's safety. The word sacrifice meant that they would be abstained from living a normal life, something that their sacrifice would allow others to have. Still, a part of him wasn't ready to acknowledge his friend's words. It still wanted the boy to live a normal life. Right now, the villages are at peace with each other. I think what you meant to say was, right now, the villages are at a lack of crucial reserves, so they are refraining from initiating another war. Hiruzen nodded, making no effort to deny Danzo's statement. Yes, and since the lack of reserves is keeping them at bay. For now, I don't think we need another weapon, especially one shaped out of a child. A light grunt of annoyance was Danzo's response to the utterly stupid statement of his friend. Don't act irrationally again, Hiruzen. How long do you think the villages will remain silent? I don't know. Then how can you conclude that we don't need a weapon? Fury flickered within Danzo's lone eye as he placed a hand on Hokage's desk. Right now, our village is suffering from a severe lack of powerful shinobis. Except for you, Guy, and Kakashi, we don't have any exceptional shinobis left, and that's why we need to take advantage of that child. Yondaime made a mistake by sealing the beast into his child when he already had a vessel ready for it, and now you are making the same mistake by allowing that child to live freely. Danzo's words came to an abrupt end when a powerful blue aura enveloped the thin form of his friend. Shut your mouth, Danzo. Don't tell me what to do and what to not. I know very well what I'm doing, so shut your damn mouth and leave. It was not a warning, Danzo understood. It was an order, a decree which needed to be followed by him at all costs. Sure, he could have argued back with more facts, but the current state of his friend wasn't something to trifle with. You will regret your decision, Hiruzen. One day that boy will lose everything, and on that day, his emotions will destroy this village along with your beliefs. Uzumaki Naruto is not. The suffocating energy increased, and so did the tension between the two. Leave. A single word left the dry mouth of Hokage. Insolent fool. Dull and long were the two words Naruto would always use to describe the days when he wasn't around Sayuri. Without her, the world felt devoid of life and color. It was as if she was the only one who could paint his life with colors of happiness and excitement. Man, I'm so bored. Unfortunately for Naruto, today was one of those days. It was Sayuri's birthday, and he had been instructed to stay away from her by none other than her father. Just 'cause they're planning a surprise party doesn't mean I'd ruin it. A small pout emerged on his dry lips as he began to murmur to himself. I can keep a secret, you know. The pout got even bigger when he remembered how badly he was embarrassed in front of the entire clan by his brother. Idiot Ni-san, always teasing me in front of everyone. His eyes drifted away from the patch of green grass and began to stare at the blue sky above. I always feel like he wants me to say something stupid in front of Fugaku-san. Naruto shook his head immediately in denial. That couldn't be the case. His brother would never do that. Or would he? A fragment of suspicion sprouted within his mind. Nah. But before the thought could sprout further, Naruto crushed its roots. Ni-san is a nice guy. I'm sure he's just trying to have fun. Though still sounding a little bit unsure, Naruto was convinced that his brother, while an idiot, would never do that to him. With his thoughts concluded, the monotonous silence returned as Naruto turned to stare at the sky above. The skies were awfully blue today, he idly noted. It was rather unusual given the time of year. They were supposed to be murky and filled with clouds. But today, the sky is clear somehow. His eyes then shifted towards the sun, which was looking like a glowing ball of yellow. The sun is shining brightly too. What is happening today? Wasn't it supposed to be raining right now? Naruto blinked in confusion. He couldn't help but vocalize his confusion. As far as he remembered, Shisui had forbidden him from going out as it was supposed to be raining. However, at present, while staring at the clear sky, Naruto couldn't help but wonder what had led to this change. I wonder if it's that silence before the storm Ni-san always talks about. He giggled to himself at that silly joke. There existed no such thing as that. Because if there was a storm brewing somewhere close to their vicinity, then there was no way they wouldn't get the news about it through some medium. Storms were supposed to be deadly and loud, and Naruto didn't think there was anything in their world that could suppress those sounds. This silence is taking a toll on my mental state. I need to go somewhere to refresh myself before it gets even worse. As if to ease his worries and guide him to his destination, his stomach growled loudly, indicating that it needed replenishment. Ramen, an immediate answer to his stomach's woes, left his mouth as he began to drool over the prospect of eating countless bowls of ramen with no one being there to stop him. Usually, either his brother or Sayuri would always be there to chastise him for eating that godly food carelessly. But now that they both were busy with Sayuri's birthday, Naruto had the perfect opportunity to eat his beloved food just like the way he used to do in the past. Ramen, here I come. Later that night, Naruto, are you going to finish your ramen or not? Ayame asked the boy who was sitting across the table, eyeing her as if she had just asked him to commit the most heinous of felonies. Well, now that she thought about it, in a way she exactly did that, but still, that didn't give him an excuse to glare at her like that. We are already late for Sayuri's birthday. Now that worked wonders. In a movement too fast for her to follow, Naruto stood up from his chair and flashed in front of her, holding the ramen bowl as gently as he could. Here, the amount of sadness conveyed through his voice nearly changed Ayame's mind, but the girl quickly composed herself and took the bowl away from his hand. Good. Brown tresses fluttered in the air as Ayame abruptly turned around and began to walk towards the sink. Anyway, did you buy a gift for her this time? A small smirk made its way to her lips as she heard Naruto gasp in surprise and slump down in his seat. You forgot this time, didn't you? It was more than clear that he did, but she still decided to tease him. Well, Naruto opened his mouth to say something but closed it soon when he couldn't come up with something smart to retort. Don't worry, I don't think she'll mind. For her, you being there alongside her will be enough, I guess. Although he fully agreed with what he had just heard, a part of Naruto's heart still didn't like the fact that he forgot to buy something for his best friend. Best friends were supposed to buy gifts for each other, and yet here he was, slurping down ramen like an idiot with no care in the world. I should have bought something for her. Even a little present would have been enough. His lips scrunched into a scowl as he began to imagine the scene that would unfold after her birthday. Everyone will have a gift for her except me. I. Now done with the dishes, Ayame interrupted Naruto as she sat down beside him. It's fine, Naruto. As I said, I don't think she'll mind. For her, you are already like the most precious gift she could ever receive. So, Calm down and just think about the ways you could evade confronting Fugaku-san. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. I totally forgot about him. He'll be there too and will be looking for me so that he could lecture me about Uchiha traditions, no. Ha ha ha. Hey, don't laugh. It's not my fault that man looks so scary. Ha ha. Tap. The smiles vanished from their faces in an instant when sounds of suppressed footsteps entered their ears. Ayame Naruto started, but Ayame immediately silenced him by placing a hand over his mouth. Ag. He tried to scream at her, but the girl didn't budge and kept her hand placed right over his mouth. He was about to scream once more but was silenced yet again, this time by the sound of footsteps. Tap. They were getting closer. He could sense it. Remain silent, Naruto. Something is wrong with the chakra that's approaching us. It's not familiar and is trying its best to stay hidden. The realization finally dawned on him. It was an intruder, someone who probably had no good intentions to be here. How could he be so sure about it? Well, Ayame had great control over her chakra sensing ability, and if she didn't know the owner of the chakra, then it only meant two things. One, it was of a person from a different village, probably a civilian. However, civilians don't have enough chakra and they don't know how to hide it. Then the only option left was that it was a ninja who was intentionally trying to suppress their chakra. Tap. Single quote. Everything went silent in an instant. Hokage office. After a very long time, Hiruzen, the Hokage of Konoha, was finally at peace. He was happy. No, he was beyond happy. His eyes, which usually exhibited nothing but pain and authority, were for once shimmering with happiness and serenity. Wherever he looked, he saw peace and a bright future for this war-ridden world. It's finally happening. His dry, wrinkled lips curved upwards and formed a radiant smile, one that could light up the whole sky with happiness if it wanted to. I can finally see true peace, Homura, Kaharu. He looked to his left and closed his eyes to hide his tears from his former teammates. I still can't believe it, Hiruzen. Kaharu's shaky and uncertain voice once again reminded Hiruzen how absurd the whole situation was coming across to others, even to himself. But it's true, Kaharu. His smile stretched a little more as he recalled the promise Raikage had made to him about the future of their villages. Promise. It was a rather shocking promise, one that had blindsided Hiruzen into silence for a good amount of time when it was uttered from the mouth of that man. That man, the Raikage, wasn't someone who believed in concepts of peace and pacifism. To the world, he was a mindless brute who desires nothing but the destruction of his enemies. So when he came to his village and proposed the idea of a treaty between their nations, Hiruzen was rather shocked by it. Why? Because a treaty between their villages was something his teacher Tobirama had dubbed impossible when he was alive. According to him, Kumo was a nation filled with skeptical anomalies who loved war, and for them, peace was a concept that they could never live with. It made no sense to them. But now it does, sensei, now it does. Single quote. Kumo was finally beginning to see the merits of a peaceful world, and Hiruzen was all in support of it. For him, bringing peace to his world had been his utmost priority, and if it meant that he had to put his faith in the Raikage, then so be it. They are lying. Just like that, the whole atmosphere of the room changed and took an abrupt dark turn. What do you mean, Danzo? Hiruzen was fast to show his objection to that stupid statement of his friend. Danzo's lone brown eye opened and gazed at the wrinkled face of his old friend, disappointment and hatred glowing inside it. They are deceiving us with their sweet hollow words, Hiruzen. Raikage's words, his promises mean nothing. They are all false. His expression trembled a little in rage when his friend scoffed at him. I'm not fooling around, Hiruzen. I could sense lies within those false prophetic words of his. Danzo. Danzo stopped Homura before he could intervene in their conversation. These promises of peace and security are always false. They are made just so that they can be torn apart before the war and inevitable betrayal. His hand, which was holding his famous cane, tightened its grip around the wood when Hiruzen began to glare at him. Shut up, Danzo. With a pessimistic attitude like this, you can never strive for peace. Sensing that his friend was not going to close his mouth merely with that, Hiruzen decided to do what he always does, to render him silent. Crack. A shroud of powerful blue chakra flared around the frail body of the Hokage, but before he could enhance the strength of it, a malevolent and sinister wave of energy washed over them and froze him to his place. KQB. Boom. Red scattered all over the skies. Later that night, in his life, occurrences that left Shisui truly helpless were exceptionally rare. Aside from the death of his parents and his friend, there had been no event in his life that had managed to hurt him to the level where he would find himself crying. But it looked like history was repeating itself today, and it was doing it in the worst possible way out there. We need to extract that monster out of that child, Fugaku. It's necessary for the safety of the village now. His heart, which had been relishing the joy and happiness around him till now, shattered into million pieces as he heard Hiruzen utter those words. They were despicable, saddening, and even gut-wrenching, but the thing that made them so horrifying to hear was that fact that they were inevitable as they had come out of their Hokage's mouth. But Hokage-sama, I'll not hear a single word this time, Fugaku. Shisui swallowed a sob as he looked at the man who was glaring daggers towards their clan head. Do you even understand the severity of this situation? His eyes, which were glazed with tears, began to spin ominously in sadness. He killed 3 people today, Fugaku. 3 people, in which 2 were very important for our village. Red shimmered within his eyes for a second as they morphed into the infamous Mangekyo Sharingan. This boy is a murderer in the eyes of people around the world now, Fugaku. The pattern inside his eyes began to swirl as he prepared to do something that no one could even imagine doing in their wildest dream. I'm going to erase everything, I'll change reality. But before he could do that, a hand took hold of his wrist and nudged it gently. Looking to his side, his eyes immediately went back to their original form when they saw a sad and destroyed Itachi standing beside him. From the marks on his face, Shisui could easily tell that the boy had been crying, and that fact broke the remaining will that was left inside him. Itachi. Did you hear what Hokage just said, Shisui? Why yes. These people will kill Naruto. I can sense lies in their voices. Shisui bit back another sob as soon as Itachi's words entered his ears. His friend was right, these people, these soulless people were going to kill his little brother. No matter what they say, their deceptive words were not going to fool him this time. I know, Itachi, but Hiruzen, I don't think these Uchihas will ever let us extract Kyuubi from that boy. A terrifying yet familiar voice entered Shisui's ears and froze him to his place. He's here. The Uchiha boy gasped in shock. The monster. Danzo, remain silent. It's a matter of the village's safety and I'm sure Fugaku will comply with us this time. Is that not so, Fugaku? Wet onyx eyes of Shisui shifted towards his clan head who was sitting silently on the other side of the table with a deep frown plastered on his usually stoic face. Please show some spine, Fugaku-sama, he mentally urged the man. No. A suffocating silence surrounded the whole room as soon as Fugaku uttered those words. Naruto's room. His brother was right. A storm was brewing in the corner. He could clearly see it now. Surrounded by the clouds doused in the shades of red and black, it was a storm that was raining blood on the soil of his home. And Naruto. A helpless gasp escaped his mouth as those soul-shattering words echoed in his mind for the 1000th time. You want revenge, child. I can see everything, so don't try to hide your feelings from me. I'll help you with it. Single quote. He killed her. In the attempt to save her from one monster, he killed her by becoming one himself. It was all his fault. He was the one who gave control to that monster, and in return that monster ravaged everything that came into its path. Don't be sad, Naruto. It wasn't your. Those dead brown eyes of his sister were etched into his mind now. He could never forget them. From now on, they would always be there in his mind to remind him how miserably he failed to keep his promises. I was supposed to protect them from all harm out there. His thoughts swirled into an endless abyss as he recalled all those uncorroborated promises that he had made to Ayame and Hinata in the past years. Those promises were false. He was no hero. Instead, he was a monster who killed them without showing a sliver of mercy. Hinata-sama thinks very highly of you, Naruto-san. So please promise me that you'll never break her heart and leave her alone. Single quote. Neji. Naruto's wet blue eyes widened in grief as he began to imagine what must be going inside the mind of that boy. Hinata was everything for him. She was his sister, his friend, and most importantly a ray of light in his dark world. But now, she would never be there for him to cheer him up. He took her away from that boy. I think I can trust you, Naruto-san. You are very much like me when it comes to protecting the people who we hold close to our hearts. It's interesting, isn't it? What was he going to say to that boy? There was nothing left to say now. All that Neji had was gone, and now the only thing he could give him was more pain and sadness in the form of an apology. But no apology is going to bring her and Ayame back. They are gone now, he whispered as he kept staring at the darkness that was lingering in his room like a hungry predator, waiting to pounce on him at any given moment. Creak. Naruto recoiled back into the darkness behind him when the door of his room slowly began to open with that customary horrifying sound. Naruto. His eyes immediately drifted towards the ground in shame when he realized that the owner of the voice was none other than his sweet Aunt Makoto. Naruto, I know you are there. Shoulders that had been carrying the weight of his actions as best they could for the longest time finally gave up under the gentleness of Makoto's motherly words. Her words were too powerful for them, and with them losing the battle there was nothing that could have stopped what was about to come next. Makoto-san, eyes trembling with fear and pain, Naruto began to cry profusely in the corner of his room, all while trying his best to not show his tear-covered face to the lady in front. "IK killed. You didn't kill anyone, dear. It was not you." In a blink of an eye, Makoto was in front of him, her own face covered in tears and pain. "That monster was the one who killed Ayame and Hinata-chan. You didn't do anything." Raising her hand a little, she began to stroke his hair gently. But that. Wiping the tears that were left on her face with her other hand, Makoto smiled at the boy in hopes of getting a smile in return from him. Sadly, she got none. "Shish, as I said, you did nothing wrong, Naruto. It wasn't your fault, and don't you dare think otherwise, understand?" She tried to feign rudeness in her voice, but even that failed to get a reaction out of him. "Naruto," she wailed internally. Seeing him like that was hurting her, and the fact that she could do nothing about it only made the matter worse for her. She was supposed to be like a mother to him, and as a mother, it was her responsibility to make him feel safe during situations like these. Unfortunately for her, she was failing miserably at that. "But everyone is saying that I did that." Her eyes turned red for a moment when she heard that. "Who is saying that?" she asked Naruto, her voice as cold as ice. If someone was troubling him by accusing him of something he had little to no control over, then it was her duty to get rid of that annoyance. It was the least she could do for him. That man with one eye and the people around him. He was yelling at me for being useless. Makoto immediately understood whom Naruto was talking about. Danzo. Her face withered at the thought of him. That man was a menace she knew very well. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If that man set his eye on you, then there was hardly anything you could do about it. "Did he do anything to you?" she asked the little boy immediately after, and sighed in relief when he shook his head in negative. "I don't want to leave Sayuri and Shisui alone, Makoto-san. I don't want to leave any of you. You all are the closest thing to a family I have ever had." His words broke something inside her at that moment. Maybe it was the fact that Naruto, for the first time since they had met each other, finally showed his gentle side to her, or maybe it was the amount of grief his voice carried in it. Whatever it was, it made her feel helpless and sad at the same time. Stupid Naruto. She gently flicked his nose and let out a fake giggle of hope from the brine of sadness that was spiraling inside her. "What made you think you are going away from us? No one is going anywhere. We all are going to remain together." Her words and confidence were weak, betrayed by the uncertainty in her voice. No matter what she said to the boy, ultimately, the final decision was still going to be carried out by the Hokage. He was the final decision maker in their village, and whatever he was going to accept as the absolute solution at the end was going to and had to be accepted by everyone, and that included Uchihas too. "Really?" Makoto was brought out of her thoughts by a hopeful query by Naruto. She looked at him and bit back a sob when she saw the amount of hope he had on his face at that time, even going as far as to smile at her. "Why, yes." Her lips quivered a little when the look on his face faltered for a second, indicating that he knew she was lying. "Then it's going to be fine, I guess." XXX. "Will it hurt, Makoto?" a sweet and smiling redhead asked the woman who was sitting beside her. "No, it won't, Kushina." Kushina blinked for a second before she turned her gaze towards her friend again. "But I have heard that it hurts a lot, sometimes so much that you would rather prefer dying than going through it." Her voice wavered a little as fear took over her. You are worrying about nothing, Kushina. As I said, nothing is going to happen. It will sting a little and that's it. Makoto's words came out very weak and her friend was quick to pick up on that. Hee, you are such a bad liar, Makoto. You can't even fake a serious look, you know. Makoto huffed at her friend and looked away from her to hide the embarrassment that was lingering on her face. What made you think I was lying, Kushina? When I said it won't hurt, I was being serious. But hey, if you want to make fun of me then go on, I won't mind. My, don't get mad, Makoto-chan. I was joking, you know. Anyway, it won't hurt, right? No. A serene silence fell over the two as they both kept staring at each other. An uncomfortable Makoto, who knew that Kushina knew she was lying, was about to break the silence but was halted by Kushina, who abruptly smiled at her. I see, then it's going to be fine, I guess. XXX. Tap. A small drop of tear fell down her cheeks as memories of the past began to haunt her mind again. Naruto. Her eyes widened in fear when the voice of her husband entered her ears. Why yes, Fugaku-san. Her heart shivered inside her chest. Hokage-sama is requesting your presence. More tears began to fall from her face. Oh okay. As the sound of Naruto's tiny feet began to diminish in the darkness, the fear and sadness inside Makoto's mind started to grow up to unimaginable levels. Creak. Slowly by slowly, darkness began to claim the whole room. Thank you for talking to me, Makoto-san. It meant a lot to me. His voice tore her heart into uncountable pieces. When I return, I'll make sure to serve you the best ramen I can prepare. Thud. With that, darkness finally claimed her vision. Are you sure about this, Naruto? The whole room went silent as soon as Sarutobi Hiruzen uttered those words. Waiting patiently for the momentous answer, the people in the room turned their eyes over to Naruto, who was sitting silently between his brothers. Why yes, Hokage-sama. The pain and fear in Naruto's voice didn't go unnoticed by the Uchihas in the room as they immediately tried to argue with the Hokage, but a simple gesture from Hiruzen was enough to stop dead in their tracks before they could even open their mouths. It's Naruto's own decision, and we all have to respect it. Right, Fugaku. The man in question, Uchiha Fugaku, looked away to hide his face from the prying eyes of his leader. He did not want him to see the anger flaring deep within his ruby-red eyes. It was getting uncontrollable with each passing second and only needed a slight thrust to break out and consume the man that was sitting in front of him. You are right, his voice cracked a little, and so did his will to remain calm. A slight glance at his son and Shisui told him that they were feeling the same resentment towards the man, but unfortunately, just like him, they couldn't do anything but agree with everything being proposed to them. You are right, Hokage-sama. He finally finished his answer. As expected. Sniff. Fugaku's anger reached its peak as the faint muffled cries of Naruto finally entered his ears. The boy was trying his best to keep them as low as possible, and he could tell that just by listening to them. Naruto was suffering a lot more than they could ever imagine. The little boy was trying his best to appear brave so that they won't feel bad because of him, and that fact alone was enough to break Fugaku's heart into a million pieces. Crying won't change your inevitable future, boy. All you can do is muster up the courage and face it like a true shinobi. Danzo's cold words amplified Fugaku's anger even more. Stop. As expected, he couldn't handle it anymore, and the anger inside him finally burst out with full force. Nothing is going to happen to Naruto. His ruby-red eyes turned even darker and began to flicker ominously, waiting for the right moment to show the world their wretched form. He will not be going anywhere alone with you two. The room began to shake by the sheer volume of the chakra that he was exuding. It was both a mesmerizing and chilling sight to witness. He will remain here, with us. He turned toward Naruto, and his eyes immediately softened when he saw his innocent face covered with tears and fear. Fugaku. Hiruzen. It was the first time Fugaku had ever called the old man by his name, and that fact alone was enough to silence the Hokage. If you dare lay a hand on this child, this entire village will face severe consequences. His warning was genuine, and anyone sitting in the room could tell that. Are you trying to go against the Hokage's decision, Fugaku? Danzo knew there was no better time to create a rift between the village and Uchihas than that moment. If he wanted his plans to succeed, he needed to utilize this opportunity. Do you know what that means? His eyes shifted a little to catch a glimpse of Hiruzen's face, and he couldn't help but smirk ever so slightly when he saw traces of anger and disappointment there. His friend was feeling it, he noted. I know. The room went silent again, and tension rose to unimaginable levels as Fugaku raised his right hand and placed it on top of Naruto's head. Naruto is a part of the Uchiha clan. His words were followed by a warm smile, something that people barely ever see on his stoic face. And you both are trying to take him away from us for doing what a shinobi is trained to do from the beginning. I don't care what happened there in front of that shop. The only thing I care about is that Naruto did all those things just to save himself and his friend. It was all in self-defense. Scarlet eyes of doom began to spin menacingly in his eye sockets when they saw Danzo was about to utter something again. It wasn't self-defense. He let Kyuubi take over him. Fugaku disregarded the statement with a blank look on his face. And, what did you expect a child to do in that situation? He asked the old man. No one can handle the burden of Kyuubi at his age. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Hiruzen decided to join in the conversation at that very moment. That's why we are proposing to take that monster out of Naruto-kun. With Kyuubi out, Naruto-kun will be able to live a normal life, a far more normal life than the one he is living right now. Words laced with honey and a smile doused in warmth, Hiruzen was trying his best to come across as the kind Hokage that people knew him as. He then looked at Naruto and sighed. Don't you want to live a normal life, Naruto-kun? His smile widened when the boy nodded his head gently. Then follow us, we will make sure you are not constrained to being that monster's vessel anymore. Naruto don't Fugaku tried to warn Naruto about the facade Hokage was using to lure him, but the boy didn't listen and decided to open his mouth. I want to live a normal life, Naruto whispered, his eyes still glued to the ground as he didn't have the courage to face his brothers after what he had done a while ago. I want to live a life where I can spend my entire life with this family without worrying about what people might think of them for spending time with me. Shisui, who was sitting beside him, stiffened as soon as Naruto finished his statement. I want to play and grow beside Sayuri, beside Itachi and Shisui ni. Tears began falling from his eyes, and before he knew what was happening, he was crying in front of everyone. I want to help Makoto-san with her work in the kitchen and want to be trained by Fugaku-san in our backyard. He finally looked at Hiruzen with tears-filled eyes. Will I be able to do these things if I accept your suggestion, Hokage-sama? His question rendered Hiruzen silent for a good amount of time. Of course Hiruzen paused, no doubt a little rattled by the words he had just heard. They were powerful and sad, especially because they came out of a child's mouth. In his pursuit to tarnish his wife's killer's life, he had completely forgotten that the vessel that was carrying that murderer was nothing but an innocent child. He was someone who had never seen what his parents looked like, just like his own grandson. Konohamaru. His heart ached as his mind began to think of a scenario where Naruto was replaced by his grandson. No, I have to do it. He collected himself. It was a much-needed sacrifice for his village's security. Of course Naruto, you will be able to do everything. All you have to do is follow us. His smile faltered a little when the boy didn't say anything in return. Okay, Naruto. The silence of the room and the gloomy aura of the night, both were terrifying. Sayuri, who had been sitting all alone in her room for the entire day, was getting anxious because of it. Something was very wrong. She could feel it inside her. Although she couldn't see anything, her senses were enough for her to discern that something bad had happened to Naruto. Her heart skipped a beat when his broken sad voice entered her ears. What happened? She asked him, hoping to extract some information out of him. If there was anyone who couldn't lie to her without her noticing it, then it was him. Naruto lacked the ability to lie in front of her. Nothing. Sayuri, everything is fine. His voice was a lot calmer than before, but it was still not sounding normal to her. If she was not sure before, then she was sure now. Naruto was hiding something from her. No, it's not. Raising her right hand a little, she nudged it towards his face. See, you are crying too. Her small fingers caressed the wet skin of his face as she tried to get the truth out of his mouth. I'm not crying. Naruto turned his eyes away from her to hide his shame. Even though he knew she could not see him, he was still afraid that she might catch sight of it somehow. She always did after all. It's because of sweat. I was training with Shisui-ni. His excuses were foolish. He knew that, but a part of his mind still wanted Sayuri to fall for them. Why? Because he did not have the courage to tell her the truth. His life was coming to an end. Everyone, including him, could tell that by just looking into the cold eyes of their Hokage. If that was not enough, the way his whole family was behaving was a bare giveaway of the fact that he had just accepted his inevitable death in that room a while ago. It is necessary for their safety. And yet, Naruto was not afraid of it. According to him, he did what he was supposed to do. The tragic deaths of his sister Ayame and his friend Hinata were the main reasons he had accepted Hokage's offer. When they were alive, he had promised to protect them with his life as they were a part of his family too, but unfortunately, he could not do that. He failed to keep his promise, a promise that he had made to the entire Uchiha family too, including Sayuri. If the beast that was living inside decided to overwhelm him again and unleashed its fury on the Uchiha family, then who was going to save them? No one. If the Hokage was to be believed, no one could do anything to Kyuubi except for the first Hokage. He was the only one who could tame that powerful creature. Sure, Uchihas could control it for a while like his brother did with his eyes last night, but they have their limits too. His brother, who was hailed as the most powerful Uchiha of his generation, could only restrain that beast for a while before Hokage and some other people had to intervene and subdue the beast with seals. The extraction is necessary, even if I have to die for it. His eyes shimmered with tears again as he began to recall all the memories that he had spent with his family. They were the best moments of his life, something that he had never thought he would get to experience a few years ago. The things that his family had done for him were out of this world, and he could never thank them enough for the life that they had given him. Instead, all he could do was die for their safety. Liar. Sayuri's sweet voice brought him out of the world of his thoughts. Looking at her, he tilted his head in confusion when he saw that she was glaring at him in anger. I'm not lying, Sayuri, he retorted, hoping that the girl would just stop the argument. Right now, he just wanted to spend his last moments with her in peace with nothing to disturb them. His eyes and his heart wanted to relish this moment to its fullest. HMPH, fine. First, you ruined my birthday last night and now you are trying to hide something from me. It's not fair, you know. While Sayuri just wanted to poke fun at Naruto's weird behavior, her words had the opposite effect on him. It was your birthday last night, Naruto whispered, his eyes staring at her with inconceivable sadness within them. I did ruin it completely, I think, His lips quivered when fits of silent cries began escaping from their confinement. I'm sorry for that, Sayuri. Within those silent cries, his broken voice was finding it hard to escape his mouth, but fortunately for him, Sayuri heard him. Oi. Sayuri wasted no time in scooting closer to him. Are you okay, Naruto? Her concern-filled voice and narrowed pale eyes were not doing justice to how worried she was about Naruto at that moment. They never could if you asked her. There was no way anything, be it an action or a thing, could describe just how much she adored him. It was impossible. Why yes. Her cold hands met his warm skin as she began caressing his right cheek gently, making sure to wipe the tears that were running down his face. No, you are not okay, Naruto. Something is troubling you, I can feel it. That she could. She did not need eyes or the presence of another individual to know what was going through Naruto's mind. Her heart was enough to decipher that when needed. I'll be leaving you alone, Sayuri. Just like that, an eerie wave of silence engulfed the entire room, rendering both Naruto and Sayuri speechless for a while. What? Sayuri could not believe what she was hearing. I must have heard it wrong. She reassured herself. There was no way her Naruto would even think about leaving her for a moment. He was her best friend, and if there was one thing that Naruto had always told her, then it was that best friends don't leave each other alone. Are you joking with me, Naruto? She asked him, hoping that he would say yes. And no, unfortunately, he did not. Sayuri would have argued back saying that he was still trying to fool her, but she didn't. The amount of honesty he had in his voice at that moment was enough for her to understand that he was not joking. What happened? Her glazed eyes moved towards him, yearning to see something there, but just like every other time, they could not see anything. All that was standing in front of them was a wide endless void. Naruto paused, taking a moment to contemplate whether telling her about everything that had transpired in the last few hours was right or not. I'm going on a training trip outside of the village for a few years. In the end, he could not find the courage to tell her the truth. He knew if he did then she would start hating him too, and it would not take long for that hate to turn into fear. He had experienced that very well in the past. Training. Her eyes scrunched up in confusion. With whom? As far as she knew, no one in their village was interested in training Naruto other than his brothers, and both of them would never leave the village for such a long time. So she was very skeptical about the whole thing. Jiraiya of the Sannin. Sayuri's eyebrows rose in surprise as soon as she heard that name. Him. She immediately asked Naruto, not believing him a bit. People like that man were barely interested in Naruto unless it involved something crucial for the benefit of the village. Why is he interested in training you? Oi, what do you mean by that? I'm a very good ninja. Of course, people will flock to take me under their care. I'm the next big thing, you know. Naruto's attempt at that joke was futile. Sayuri could clearly sense sadness and fear lingering beneath his voice. Naruto, what are you hiding? She was getting more worried with each passing second. Something big had happened to her friend and she wanted to know what. If it was something unimportant then her family would have never stopped her birthday party all of a sudden. The worry and fear in their voice after hearing the message that Hokage's assistant had brought was pretty easy to notice. Nothing. Naruto finally found the courage to smile at the girl. The way she was looking at him with her worry-filled eyes was heartwarming as it meant that she cared about him and that was all he ever wanted in his life. A person who cares about me. He got what he wanted and now, he did not mind doing whatever he could to keep that person safe, even if it meant dying for her. It's nothing, Sayuri, I'll be gone for a while, and then I'll return to you. He would not, and he knew that. There was no coming back from the path he had chosen for himself. Liar, shish. Raising his finger, he placed it in front of her lips, sealing them shut gently. Now don't ask any more questions, please. He whispered, his eyes still lingering on her face. He was going to miss her. Her smile, her eyes, her voice, and most importantly her presence. He was going to miss everything about her. But compared to him, who was going to die shortly after their separation, she was going to suffer a lot more. Naruto was not naive. He knew what he meant to her, and how much she adored him, but if he decided to stay just because of that then there was a good chance she would end up with the same fate as Hinata. Oi, what did I say? No more questions. Sayuri closed her mouth, her lips pursing in defeat. It did not take long for the familiar silence to return again as both of them began to stare at each other, one with his eyes while the other with her heart. Why you will return, right? Naruto didn't answer for a while. You are asking questions again, Sayuri. He whispered, tears falling freely from his eyes. I know. Just answer me. I will. Okay. Traversing over the cracks of his face, the translucent liquid of sadness finally left his face and stained the cold wood beneath. In his long and memorable life, Jiraiya had seen many types of spectacles, ranging from downright horrifying to outright tragic. But never in his life had he seen a scene this painful to watch. Just stop it, sensei. He begged his teacher, his eyes gazing at the glowing orb of light that was illuminating the room in which he was standing. But I thought you wanted to see him, Jiraiya. Jiraiya clenched his fists in anger. I did but now, I don't. Seeing him talking to that girl like that is saddening. It's only going to deteriorate my resolve. He was not lying. Before watching the scene, his resolve to do anything for the safety of his village was rock solid, but something in that sweet yet sad exchange struck his heart in a wrong way. It struck the chord that handled the rationality of his thoughts, and now, he did not want to do what he was brought to do that much. I see. Hiruzen stood from his seat and turned over to gaze at the village from his window. It was one of the most beautiful views in the world according to him, as it held everything that Hiruzen wanted to protect. Then you must remember what Minato did to protect this village and its people, Jiraiya. He knew he had said the right thing when Jiraiya unclenched his fists immediately. He sacrificed him, his wife, and most importantly the happiness of his son for the sake of this village. His wrinkled eyes gleamed with mirth when a ray of moonlight entered the Hokage room and adorned everything with its radiance. But he didn't do what you are asking me to do, sensei. Hiruzen gripped the window sill gently and hovered his head outside to bask in the cold breeze that was skimming over his beautiful village. It's the same thing, my dear. When Minato sealed that beast inside Naruto, the Naruto who was supposed to be his child died at that very moment. All that was left behind was a boy waiting to be utilized for the security of our village. No, do you think Minato didn't know what he was doing, Jiraiya? Hiruzen asked, his voice as calm as ever. If you think he didn't, then you are completely wrong. Minato was a very smart person, Jiraiya. He knew what he was doing and did what he thought was right for his village. It's the duty of a Hokage to make sacrifices for the village, and he did just that. A small smile made its way to his wrinkled lips as he recalled the words of his teacher, something that he could never forget. They were like a beacon of light that would always be there to guide him in the darkest of the paths. I see. Jiraiya pondered the words he had just heard from his teacher's mouth. They were no doubt emotional and motivating, but a part of his heart could not help but feel indignant at the amount of hypocrisy that was oozing out of them. Okay then, I'll do what is needed, sensei. Yet, he made no argument about it whatsoever. The atmosphere around the village was already depressing and he did not want to raise another crisis with his words. I expected no less from you, Jiraiya, Hiruzen mumbled, his lips still supporting that smile from earlier. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten, just like Minato's. He closed his eyes and allowed the cold breeze to soothe his face. Now that irritated Jiraiya even further. Initially, he did not want to raise any conflict with his teacher, but the words that were coming out of the man's mouth were full of hypocrisy and entitlement. You know, you are sounding just like that stupid Danzo right now, sensei. He knew his words spurred something inside his teacher because the man immediately turned around and began to stare at him with curiosity. How so? Jiraiya smiled at the man, a smile full of disappointment and disdain. Talking about sacrifices while making none on your own, his smile turned wicked when the old man began to shake a little. Sometimes when I'm free, I wonder whether Minato and Kushina would have been alive if they had stayed under Orochimaru's care. That man, if you ignore his shortcomings, was a spectacular teacher, and adored both of them more than anyone else, even me. His teachings were vastly different from yours too, so I can't help but feel Minato and Kushina would have better. Jiraiya, Hiruzen exclaimed, no doubt surprised by what he was hearing. His student, his dear student, was talking back to him and was questioning his teachings too. Do you even know what you are uttering right now? He asked him, hoping that Jiraiya would reconsider what he had just spoken. It was preposterous in every way possible, mostly because it suggested that he had made no sacrifices for his village. I very well understand what I'm saying, sensei, Jiraiya responded with a face showing nothing but disappointment. It's you who don't understand what nonsense you are uttering. You have no right to speak of sacrifices, sensei. You have made none for this village. All you have done is hold the virtuous sacrifice of your wife as your own. If that's how it works, then I'm sorry to say but Naruto has made more sacrifices than your whole group of friends combined. His voice and demeanor were gleaming with anger, and they only needed one more push to turn rogue and engulf everything in their fury. Unfortunately, Hiruzen did just that. Have you lost your mind, Jiraiya? The Hokage yelled in desperation, trying his best to defuse the situation as soon as possible. He could not risk turning Jiraiya against him at this moment. He was necessary for the extraction. See, if you don't want to do the extraction, then it's fine. I will ask someone else to do it instead of you. But please stop making these ridiculous claims, my dear child. He decided to turn his voice more calm and fatherly, something that he knew had worked wonders in the past. I'll do the extraction. You don't have to worry about it, sensei. Jiraiya's statement soothed Hiruzen's worries a little. But that doesn't mean I can't call out your hypocrisy when needed, and just like that, the tension returned. You and your friend Danzo are failures. Hell, if I have to be honest, I would say that if Tobirama-sama was alive he would have been disappointed with both of you. You both turned an innocent concept such as will of fire into something eerily similar to what other villages use to manipulate their shinobis. Jiraiya would have continued further but his teacher decided to intervene yet again. Jiraiya, stop. You are being ridiculous right now. But Jiraiya did not listen to him this time. He wanted to pour his heart out before doing something as terrible as that extraction. In the past few years, I have traveled from village to village in search of peace and have realized one very important thing. As wrong as they might seem at first, Orochimaru's teachings weren't that incorrect. He was an orphan, sensei, but unlike me, who never had any parents, to begin with, he had a lovely family who was killed shortly after. He understood what it meant to have a family and how significant it was for an individual's overall growth. That's why he always emphasized protecting your family first, then the village. The sage paused for a while, allowing the words to sink into the mind of his teacher. But the village is our family too. As soon as Hiruzen uttered that argument, a small dry chuckle escaped from Jiraiya's mouth. Really? He asked and clenched his fist when Hiruzen nodded his head in response. Then why doesn't this family treat Naruto with kindness? Isn't a family supposed to do that? Tell me, sensei. Hiruzen was in turmoil. Never in his entire life had he been presented with these kinds of ridiculous yet somewhat true statements. Whatever Jiraiya had just spoken was genuine, no matter how outrageous it sounded to him or others like him. They would have, Jiraiya. Hiruzen finally opened his mouth. But the beast that is sealed inside the boy took the lives of their precious people. So, it's natural that they would hate him too in their pursuit of hating the beast. And that includes you, right, sensei? That did it for Hiruzen. The chakra inside him went berserk and began flaring around him like a wild beast. You are making assumptions without any evidence to back it up, Jiraiya. So I ask you to close your mouth and leave my room immediately. It was the first time Hiruzen had done this in front of his student, and he hoped it was the last time too. Angry as he might be at Jiraiya, he was still his beloved student, and he did not want him to leave him too, just like his other two students. He was the sanest of the three and he hoped it stayed like that. Sure. The room went silent and so did Hiruzen's chakra. The old man fell into his chair due to exhaustion, mental exhaustion to be precise. After so, someone had dared to oppose his teachings and Hiruzen did not like it a bit. You hold the virtuous sacrifice of your wife as your own. Single quote. He clutched his head to ease the pain that was surging through it. You changed the concept of the will of fire into something terrible. Single quote. The naive yet cold words of Jiraiya began to echo inside his mind, trying to break it completely. Bawako. His eyes went blank as they began to fade deep into the abyss of the memories of the past. XXX. Will she be all right, Hiruzen? A gentle warm voice asked the man who was sitting on the other side of the glass table. Of course, she will be all right, Bawako, Hiruzen answered with certainty. And even if something does happen to her, then Minato will be there to do the needful. His voice took a sharp turn and got doused in the shadow of authority. Hiruzen, Bawako shouted, her face looking not so pleased with what she had heard just now. What? Bawako continued to stare at him for a while before looking away in dismay. You are sounding so apathetic right now. I don't like it, she whispered, her voice as low as a whisper. Hiruzen smiled at the lady. Ah, so that's why you got so angry all of a sudden, huh? He let out a small chuckle. I was being honest, Bawako. We both know how difficult it is going to be for Kushina, so we need to take precautions at every turn. The thing that she holds inside her is very important for our village. We can't let anything happen to it. The old man nodded. The beast I meant. If she was not angry before then she was absolutely furious right now. Hiruzen, she murmured, regarding the man with concern and resentment. Please don't be like this. Her lips curved downward as a sad smile began to bloom on them. Don't be like what? Him. Now that made Hiruzen a little worried. Who was his wife talking about? He needed to find out. Like whom? He asked her, intrigued to know the answer. Danzo. An uncomfortable silence fell upon the two as soon as Bawako uttered that name. Him. After a while, Hiruzen finally opened his mouth. Yes, you were sounding just like him. I didn't like it. A sad yet warm smile made its way to Hiruzen's lips. Bawako. He whispered her name with as much love as he could muster at that moment. I would never turn out to be like that man. His smile widened when he saw sadness leave the face of his wife. Promise me then. Hiruzen shook his head at the childish antics of his wife. She was still the same Bawako he had fallen for in his youth. I promise. XXX. You were sounding just like that man, sensei. Single quote. Hiruzen's wrinkled brown eyes snapped open in shock, filled with tears and despair. Have I failed you, Bawako? His question went unanswered as the ray of moonlight that had been illuminating the room got covered by the clouds, leaving nothing but a miserable Hiruzen and a heart-wrenching silence behind in the dark room. Thanks.